Chapter 1867. Just as he had expected, even when he was outside the military formation and had the help of the life and death scripture, the overwhelming influx of spiritual energy only made the dragon blood branch more vigorous. It could not stop its vitality from flowing away. It was still losing its vitality quickly. More importantly, not only did the abundant spiritual energy not increase its vitality, it was also speeding up its loss of vitality. It was as if the vigorous spiritual energy was burning its life. Chu frowned deep in thought. He quickly cut off the spiritual energy and sealed all of it at the same time to prevent it from devouring it. As a result, the speed at which its vitality flowed was greatly reduced. This made Chu speechless. This blood dragon tree was different from other spirit herbs in every aspect. It was very strange. It was no wonder Jing Shilai dared to release it. He was certain that no one could keep it alive. Chu recalled what he had said to Jing Shilai earlier. Fresh blood. It was not dragon blood but human blood. However, was it the blood of a man or a woman? Was it the blood of an ultimate yin body or an ultimate yang body? Or was it the blood of a virgin boy or a virgin girl? Unfortunately, he could not ask for the answer and could only deduce it himself. In a flash of inspiration, he bit his index finger, and the blood from his finger flowed onto a withered branch. When the blood landed on the withered branch, faintly discernible scales suddenly appeared. They were no different from real dragon scales, but they were not as big as dragon scales. However, they looked like dragon scales. It was indeed worthy of being called a blood dragon tree. It seemed that this tree was somewhat related to dragons. As soon as the scales appeared, they immediately disappeared, along with the blood. Chu senses were extremely sharp. He was even more sensitive to his own blood. Even though he had entered the branch, he could still feel it. As he reached out and touched the branch, he could feel it even more clearly. He seemed to see the passages in the blood dragon tree branch that extended in all directions. In this way, the absorption of spiritual energy was extremely fast and the loss of spiritual energy was also faster. It was indeed different from ordinary spirit herbs. After the blood entered it, it was quickly digested as if it had completely fused with the branch and was spread everywhere. Its vitality steadily increased. However, Chu expression did not improve. He realized that after the vitality increased, it was still flowing away and the speed did not slow down. It seemed that the divine God's blood could increase its vitality but could not become the source of it. It would still die. Even if it relied on its own blood to prolong its life, it wouldn't last long. This drop of blood could maintain its lifespan for a day. The key was that without a source of vitality, it could not bloom and bear fruit. Xueling, drip a drop of blood on it, Chu said. Xueling, who had been watching from the side, was already very curious. Seeing Chu bite his finger and drip blood, she became even more curious. Hearing what Xueling said, she bit her index finger and dripped the blood onto the branch without hesitation. Her white and tender finger reflected the blood, making it look exceptionally red. The blood was like a pearl, but it slid down the branch and was not absorbed by it. Chu furrowed his brows. It seemed like his speculation was correct. The only thing it wanted to absorb was the enlightened master's blood. He would probably disdain the fresh blood of anyone other than a heavenly god. Chu shook his head helplessly. She was really picky. Young master, what happened? Xueling pointed at the blood that had dripped onto the ground and disappeared into the soil. Do you want another drop? Let's try again, Chu said. Xueling squeezed her slender and white index finger and squeezed out another drop of blood. She leaned forward and her index finger and the branch were almost touching. The drop of blood steadily fell onto the branch, then slid down the branch and disappeared into the soil. Xueling stood up and turned to look at Chu. Young master, what happened? It might be a little picky about blood, Chu said. Is my blood not clean? Xueling was a little depressed. Chu smiled. It only wants the enlightened master's blood. So that's how it is. Xue Ling let out a sigh of relief and smiled. Young master, it's too picky. It wants the enlightened master's blood. Chu Li said, the enlightened master's blood is useless. I'll think of another way. As he said this, he put the 2 branches back into the wooden box and suddenly disappeared. The next moment, he appeared in Juea Valley. If it was any other spirit herb, he would definitely not bring it to Juea Valley, but not the blood dragon tree. Zhao Dai's identity also needed him to return as soon as possible and show himself in front of others. Therefore, he did not have much time to study it. He needed to kill it in one strike and find the root of the problem as soon as possible. Asking the purple dragon and the Xianyuan tortoise was the shortcut. A moment later, the purple dragon and the mystic origin tortoise arrived. The 2 spirit beasts were at a loss when they saw the blood dragon tree. Clearly, they had never seen it before. Chu Li shook his head helplessly, then discussed with Zi Long and decided to pour some dragon blood on it to test it out. Dragon blood had an extremely powerful corrosive ability, and it was no different from poison. Fortunately, there were 2 of them. The name of the blood dragon tree and the strange appearance of the blood dragon tree made him conclude that it was related to dragon blood, and he wanted to give it a try. Zi Long readily agreed and quickly scratched its mouth with its claws. Blood began to flow from its mouth, and a few drops dripped onto the blood dragon branch. Sizzle! Soon, the blood dragon tree branch began to emit white gas. Chu Li hurriedly used his spiritual energy to protect it, but it was too late. As soon as the dragon's blood entered the tree branch, white steam immediately rose. Then, the scales of the branch appeared and fused with the dragon's blood. Chu Li watched helplessly as it melted in the dragon's blood. In the blink of an eye, only a wisp of white steam was left. The blood dragon's branch had already disappeared. Chu Li shook his head helplessly and stomped his feet. Zi Long narrowed his eyes and looked at Chu Li with some embarrassment. Chu Li patted its paw, indicating that it was all right, but he was at his wits' end. The omniscient mirror and heavenly star insight skill in his mind kept spinning, looking for a chance. After a while, he had a flash of inspiration and suddenly disappeared, reappearing at the 100,000 Hills ice pool. On a boulder beside the ice pool stood the little vermilion bird with rosy white skin. It was taking a nap with its eyes closed, as if it was cultivating. When it sensed Chu Li's appearance, it opened its eyes and then closed them again. Chu Li asked, "Little vermilion bird, do you know about the blood dragon tree?" After his omniscient mirror and heavenly star insight skill spun rapidly, the little vermilion bird's figure suddenly flashed across the omniscient mirror. He hurriedly rushed over. Blood dragon tree? The little vermilion bird opened its small, intelligent eyes again. Zi Long and Dark Origin Tortoise appeared right after and immediately leaped into the ice pool to play. Instantly, the calm ice pool became turbulent. Soon, waves crashed against the shore and were about to splash onto Chu Li and the little vermilion bird. Chu Li nodded and said, "I obtained a blood dragon tree branch, but I can't keep it alive. I'm sure you know that." "Humph." The little vermilion bird turned its head away. Chu Li was overjoyed. This vermilion bird obviously knew about blood dragon trees. "If you can tell me how to cultivate blood dragon trees, I can help you become a vermilion bird," the little vermilion bird said. The little vermilion bird's voice rang in Chu Li's ears. "You're bluffing." Chu Li smiled and said, "Aren't Zi Long and Dark Origin Tortoise only one step away?" They're still far from supreme grade." The little vermilion bird scoffed. "You can't help them become supreme grade." Chu Li said, "My master can help his dragon become a golden dragon, I can help too." "All right, there's no harm in telling you," the little vermilion bird said. "But you must help me cultivate every time you come over." "Of course." Chu Li nodded. "I'll come over once every 10 days." "All right." The little vermilion bird agreed happily. Chapter 1868. Other than our clan, I don't know about the blood dragon tree. The little vermilion bird's proud voice rang in Chu Li's mind. Chu Li nodded and looked like he was all ears. The little vermilion bird continued, "To make the blood dragon tree grow, you need the blood of 4 types of spirit beasts: azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, and black tortoise. You should know this. Isn't that the heart technique you're cultivating? It's called the 4 spirits of heaven and earth." Chu Li asked, "The blood of the 4 spirit beasts? Combine the blood of the 4 types of spirit beasts and pour it on the tree. It'll naturally grow." The little vermilion bird scoffed. "Simple, right?" Chu Li smiled bitterly. "The blood of the 4 spirits. Do I need a supreme spirit beast? The blood dragon tree doesn't need a supreme spirit beast. Grade 1 will do." The little vermilion bird said, "I can help you get the blood of the vermilion bird. You can do the rest yourself." The blood of the white tiger. Chu Li shook his head. The little vermilion bird said, "Are you stupid? Just let your 2 fellows do it." "That's true." Chu Li smiled. As he spoke, he looked at the 2 spirit beasts who were having fun in the ice pond. The little vermilion bird glanced at them and scoffed arrogantly. Chu Li said, "Then let's start now. I'll leave the blood of the vermilion bird to you." "Don't forget what you said." The clear voice of the little vermilion bird rang in his mind. Then, it turned into a shadow and shot into the sky, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Chu Li called out the 2 spirit beasts and asked them for help. The 2 spirit beasts agreed readily and soon disappeared into the sky. Chu Li felt uneasy as he watched them leave. The tiger was known as the king of beasts. Although that was only for wild beasts and was far from being the king in the 100,000 hills, it should not be underestimated. It was far more powerful than ordinary spirit beasts. He did not know if the 2 spirit beasts could obtain the blood of the spirit tiger. If he hurt them because of this, he would feel guilty. About an hour later, the purple dragon and the mystic origin tortoise appeared. The purple dragon was holding a huge spirit tiger in its mouth. In front of the purple dragon, the spirit tiger was like an obedient cat, weak and powerless. The soul power of the purple dragon and the mystic origin turtle were both extremely powerful. It was only because their connection with Chu Li was different that he was able to see into their minds. Through the images in the minds of the purple dragon and the mystic origin tortoise, Chu Li knew that the 2 spirit beasts were now working very well together. One was in charge of baiting, while the other was in charge of launching sneak attacks. The mystic origin tortoise would attack first, but its shield was too sturdy, so its opponent could not do anything to it even if it was exhausted. At this time, the purple dragon would appear and launch a sneak attack. When this huge spirit tiger saw the Xianyuan tortoise, it was bored and wanted to play with the Xianyuan tortoise to pass the time. In the end, it was caught and brought here. Chu Li let out a long whistle. The little vermilion bird transformed into a shadow and shot over with a blood-red feather in its beak. When it came close to Chu Li, it released its beak and the bright red feather fluttered down. Chu Li, on the other hand, was a little hesitant. He did not dare to reach out and take it. He had suffered from the vermilion bird's feathers before. "The blood is inside, take it." The little vermilion bird's voice rang out. Chu Li looked at the little vermilion bird. The little vermilion bird rolled her eyes. She could tell that Chu Li was being cautious. She scoffed. "If I wanted to kill you, you'd be long dead." Chu Li smiled and took the bright red feather. Suddenly, a scorching aura seeped into his body, almost cooking him. Chu Li originally thought that the little beast in the void of his mind would absorb it, which was why he dared to take the feather. However, he did not expect the little beast to ignore it. Chu Li had no choice but to use the vermilion bird power. After the scorching aura circulated through his body, it turned into a warm aura and returned to his dantian. It was quite beneficial to him. Only then did he have the time to look at the bright red feather. It shone brightly under the sunlight, as if a rainbow had flashed by. The little vermilion bird sized up the spirit tiger and scoffed. "You'd better be careful. It has parents." Chu Li's expression changed slightly. He looked at the spirit tiger that had its eyes closed and hurriedly asked the purple dragon to put it down. Then, he went forward to pull out the Sky Killer sword and forcefully slashed the spirit tiger's calf. With great difficulty, he made a small cut and a few drops of blood flowed out. A few drops of blood slowly floated up and floated in the air like red bead. Chu Li used the void as a bottle to hold them. He then asked the purple dragon and the Xianyuan tortoise to release some blood. Their blood beads also floated up slowly. Then, he told them to quickly put the spirit tiger back to its original position and sneak back after waking it up. He did not want to attract its parents. Even if its parents were not supreme spirit beasts, they were at least rank 1. It would be troublesome to provoke them. After the purple dragon and the Xianyuan tortoise left with the spirit tiger, Chu Li used the Sky Killer sword to cut off the vermilion bird's feather. A few drops of bright red blood slowly flowed out of the tube of the feather. The little vermilion bird scoffed. "How you fuse them is your problem. It's useless if you can't." Chu Li slowly nodded. He suddenly disappeared from the 100,000 hills, along with the blood beads. Xue Ling was patrolling the island. She was now personally inspecting the island and did not allow anyone to go on the island to prevent secrets from being leaked. There were more and more secrets on the island. When she saw Chu Li return, she went forward and bowed. Chu Li said, "I'm going to plant the blood dragon tree. No one can disturb me." "Yes." Xue Ling nodded lightly. Chu Li found a secluded spot and inserted 2 withered branches into the soil. Then, he began to fuse the blood of the 4 spirit beasts. To others, fusing the 4 spirit blood was extremely difficult. However, it was a piece of cake for him. He fused the 4 spirit beast heart techniques into one. As long as he infused the inner energy of the 4 spirit beast heart techniques into his spirit blood, they could be easily fused under the guidance of his inner energy. After the 4 spirit blood was fused, it turned into a pure white milk. It was rather strange. Chu Li divided the 4 spirit blood into 10 and tried to drip a drop of blood onto a branch of the blood dragon tree. The blood dragon tree branch silently swelled, as if it had become thicker. Then, it slowly flattened. The drop of blood had already disappeared. The other 2 withered branches were also inserted into the soil. He poured a drop of the 4 spirit blood on them, and they were quickly absorbed. No matter how strange the blood dragon tree was, the life and death scripture could still work. As long as he used the 4 spirit blood and had the source of vitality, he could use the life and death scripture to reverse life and death. Unfortunately, he could not do anything about the branch from before. It had already been destroyed by the purple dragon's blood. He poured the remaining 7 drops of blood onto the remaining blood dragon tree branches. 3 drops for each withered branch and 1 drop for the living branch. The surging spiritual energy covered the sky and earth. The blood dragon tree branches began to grow rapidly. It was the complete opposite of the situation without the source of vitality. Not only did the surging spiritual energy not consume the vitality, but it also strengthened it. This was the difference between having a source of vitality and not having one. He decided to delve deeper. There were all kinds of strange things in the world. Under the operation of the life and death scripture, the branch quickly grew taller and thicker. After half a day, it grew into a small tree. Then, the small tree blossomed and slowly bore fruit. The fruit was only the size of a pinky. After it appeared, the growth of the entire blood dragon tree slowed down. Chu Li's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly felt dozens of murderous intents directed at him. Therefore, he reminded Xue Ling not to let anyone near this place. He unsheathed the sky-regaining sword and replaced it with the modesty sword. Then, he suddenly disappeared and appeared in a forest between the Zheng dynasty's military camp and the Great Light Peak. This forest was 100 miles away from the place where the murderous intents were emitted. For a master, it would only take a while. Chu Li had transformed into Zhao Dave. Chapter 1869. He actually saw Dong Guanyi. He really hadn't expected this. After Dong Guanyi fled in a sorry state the last time, logically speaking, Dong Guanyi should be cultivating bitterly in seclusion, knowing his shame and striving to become stronger. What was even more unexpected was that Zhao Dai was only a grandmaster. Even though he was a top-notch priest in the Holy Church of Light, Dong Guanyi did not need to make a move against him. Dong Guanyi was an enlightened master, so he could not simply attack a grandmaster. He shook his head in confusion. However, he saw Dong Guanyi raise his head and look in his direction. Then, with a point of his finger, 20 grandmasters beside him immediately moved out and dashed towards them. After activating the life and death scripture, Chu Li suppressed his cultivation level. However, even if a large part of his cultivation level was sealed, he still remained at the peak of the Grandmaster. He was just a step away from the enlightened master and almost reached the level before he became an enlightened master. He was already invincible in the Grandmaster and even had the ability to threaten the enlightened masters. He did not bring the heaven-killing sword with him, so he could not unleash the power of the heaven-killing sword technique. The modesty sword could not withstand the heaven-killing technique, or else it could kill an enlightened master. A moment later, Dong Guanyi hid in the void. 20 grandmasters had already appeared and surrounded Chu Li. It was obvious that they had come with ill intentions. Chu Li frowned and said, "I'm Zhao Dai from the Holy Church of Light. Who are you?" "Black Tortoise Mountain," an elder said. Chu Li scoffed and said, "We have never had any grudges with Black Tortoise Mountain. What are you doing?" "Hand over the blood dragon branch." The robust old man spoke in a deep voice. Chu Li said, "Only the Jing dynasty's emperor and our bishop know about the blood dragon branch." "How did you know?" The elder frowned and stared at him, trying to figure out the truth. Chu Li shook his head and sighed. "It seems that Jing Shilai played us and wanted to reap the benefit. Don't you think it's strange that he could get such top-secret information? The spies in the military don't have such great abilities." He had already seen through the elder's thoughts. From what the old man saw, this report was sent by someone from the Black Tortoise Mountain's army. After the Black Tortoise Mountain's Black Tortoise Hall's elders studied it, they sent people to intercept the Blood Dragon's branch. Regardless of whether it was true or not, they still had to make this trip. As for the Holy Church of Light, they no longer cared about them. Back then, Sun Mingyue and Chu Li had joined forces to force the Holy Church of Light to capture one of their disciples, General Zhong Wanqing of the Qiu dynasty. Zhong Wanqing was very important to them as he was the key figure for the Jing dynasty to annex the Qiu dynasty in the future. Therefore, Black Tortoise Mountain hated Sun Mingyue to the core. Dong Guanyi didn't pay too much attention to these things, so he didn't show any hostility towards Sun Mingyue. However, since the Black Tortoise Hall elder had made such a decision, as one of the Black Tortoise Hall elders, he naturally had to comply. He would protect her in secret to ensure that nothing would go wrong. The old man frowned and pondered. He had already believed Chu Li's words, but there was nothing he could do even if he did. He knew that it was a trap, but he still had to step into it. As long as Chu Li had the Blood Dragon branch, they were also eager to get their hands on it so that they could create more martial arts masters. Now that they had the vitality-devouring tortoise, they already had enough martial arts masters. Chu Li said, "Jing Shilai really has a good plan. Are we going to fall for it obediently?" "Where's the Blood Dragon branch?" The old man said slowly, "As long as you hand over the Blood Dragon branch, we'll let you go." Chu Li shook his head and said, "I don't have the Blood Dragon branch." "Humph, looks like you won't give up until you see your coffin." The old man's face darkened. Chu Li said, "You guys are so gullible. Jing Shilai said that I have the Blood Dragon branch, so I have it?" "You definitely have it." The old man nodded slowly. "Otherwise, Jing Shilai wouldn't have used us. Zhao Dai, if you don't hand it over, we'll have no choice but to offend you." We'll naturally be able to find it after we cripple you. Chu Li chuckled. With just you guys? Although he was prepared to use them to make a name for himself, he still gave them a chance. This was also where his bottom line was. As long as they did not seek death, he would not kill them. Most of the time, their efforts would be in vain. The old man waved his hand. Do it, kill him. He was prepared to cripple Chu Li, but when he attacked, he would often cause trouble for himself. Being kind to the enemy was being cruel to oneself. Even if he killed him, with Dong Guangyi's spirit pill, as long as he was still breathing, he could be saved. 20 grandmasters pounced on Chu Li, almost all of them using their fists. The power of the Black Tortoise's divine fist was astonishing, and it was even more overbearing in their hands. When they joined forces, the fist force of several people could converge together, so they were very confident that as long as Chu Li was not an enlightened master, he would not be able to withstand their joint attack. Chu Li scoffed and looked up at the sky. A bright light descended from the sky and fell on his body. Suddenly, his whole body was shrouded in bright light, as if there was a flame burning in his body, and the flame swayed with the wind. Bang! Chu Li flashed like a ghost and escaped from the encirclement of the 20 people. With a punch of the divine light fist, a bright light from the flame shot out along with the fist force, and a punch sent a middle-aged man flying. The middle-aged man was in the air, clenching his fists and crossing his wrists. A vague shadow of a turtle shell appeared around his body. It was obviously the Black Tortoise power. Chu Li had cultivated the Black Tortoise power before, so he was very clear about its defensive power. This middle-aged man would not be able to withstand the divine light fist. Chu Li's punch looked like the divine light fist, but the inner energy that was used to activate the fist technique was the supreme diamond scripture. Although his cultivation level was suppressed, the purity of the supreme diamond scripture was still incomparable to his great light scripture. Bang! A dull sound came from inside the middle-aged man's body, and then he fell to the ground softly. He spat out blood from the corner of his mouth, like a pile of mud on the ground. He was powerless and could not get up. Chu Li's punch broke through his defense, and once his defense was broken, it was equivalent to breaking the Black Tortoise power. The Black Tortoise power could not be used temporarily, and his body was powerless. The rest of the people's expressions changed slightly. They were surprised by his ghostly body movement technique, and they were also surprised by the power of his divine light fist. According to their estimates, the divine light fist could not break through their Black Tortoise power. Bang 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 bang! Chu Li's body was like a ghost, suddenly in front and suddenly behind. It was impossible to defend. One after another, the divine light fist was thrown out, and the grandmasters from the Black Tortoise Mountain were sent flying. It seemed that the 20 of them working together was useless. In front of Chu Li, they were like children without any resistance. Out of the 20 grandmasters, only 3 were left in the blink of an eye. The remaining 17 were lying on the ground, limp and unable to get up. They could only stare at him, watching his every move, their eyes filled with hope. Chu Li suddenly stopped and looked at the 3 grandmasters in front of him. One was a middle-aged man, and the other 2 were young men. The 3 of them looked calm, without a hint of fear. When they saw that Chu Li had stopped, not only did they not escape, but they also took the initiative to attack Chu Li. Chu Li fluttered backward and said in a low voice, "It's better if the 3 of you know what's good for you. I'll spare your lives." "Humph." One of the young men sneered, "Zhao, who asked you to spare me? If you have the guts, try and touch me. You have some skills, but unfortunately you're too ugly. Sun Mingwei will never like you." Another young man sneered. Chu Li's face darkened, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Chapter 1870. Shut up! Chu Li shouted and said coldly, "The bishop is not someone you can joke around with." "Hee, it seems like you really like the bishop." The young man smiled. Chu Li replied, "Who doesn't like the bishop? So you like him?" The young man continued to pursue him. Chu Li replied, "That's right, I like the bishop, respect him, and see him as a god, but it's not as dirty as you think. I have no intention of occupying him. The bishop is like the sky, how can I have any thoughts of blasphemy?" You're not a man. The young man laughed. "No matter how powerful your bishop is, she's still a woman. Since she's a woman, she must have a man. I heard she likes Chu Li, right?" Chu Li's expression darkened. "Shut up. Falling flowers are affectionate, but the flowing water is unrequited. This is indeed a sad thing." The young man laughed and said, "But it's no wonder. Who told you to be ugly?" Chu Li's expression darkened. "You're trying so hard to provoke me, forcing me to kill you so that Dong Guangyi will have an excuse to attack, am I right? Are you brother Dong Guangyi? How did you know?" The young man cried out. Chu Li laughed coldly. "How interesting. Isn't Dong Guangyi afraid of heavenly punishment for exploiting the loophole of the heavenly rule?" "What nonsense are you spouting?" Another elder shouted. "What heavenly rules?" Chu Li tilted his head and shook his head. "Looks like you're Dong Guangyi's senior master, right? Zhao Dave, you've brought disaster to the Holy Church of Light." The elder said, "Your bishop is no match for Guangyi." Chu Li laughed disapprovingly. "Dong Guangyi can defeat the bishop? What a joke." The elder said, "Although you admire your bishop, you can't say something so stupid, right? Dong Guangyi is on par with Chu Li, how can he not defeat Sun Mingyue?" Chu Li replied, "The bishop's martial arts are rare, it's just that he doesn't show it to the world. Dong Guangyi? He's just a funny guy with good luck, not worth mentioning." "Shut up!" the old man shouted coldly. Chu Li said, "Dong Guangyi is an enlightened master, but he wanted to attack a grandmaster. Moreover, he even used such a despicable move. I really look down on him. How can someone like him compare to our bishop? What a joke!" "How dare you!" the elder charged at Chu Li. Like a ghost, Chu Li floated behind him and punched him in the back. He sensed that Sun Mingyue had finally gotten rid of Zheng Shilai's entanglement and rushed over. "Stop!" It was as if a muffled thunder had exploded in his ears. Chu Li's movements paused for a moment before he flew up. Chu Li spat out a mouthful of blood in the air. Dong Guangyi suddenly appeared in the air and looked down at Chu Li. His eyes were as cold as lightning as he said, "What a priest from the Holy Church of Light. You have both wisdom and courage. How rare! How rare! Thank you for the compliment." Sun Mingyue's cold voice echoed in the air. She slowly emerged from the sky and caught Chu Li in midair. She placed one hand on his shoulder and lifted him up into the air. Dong Guangyi said in a low voice, "Bishop's son, this person hurt my master. I can only kill him." Sun Mingyue said, "Impossible. Looks like Bishop's son wants to go against me?" Dong Guangyi said coldly. Sun Mingyue's eyes flickered behind her white veil. She said, "The Black Tortoise Mountain treats the Holy Church of Light like nothing. Dong Guangyi, let's not talk nonsense. Let's fight and see if the second most powerful person in the world is real." "Very well, I'm about to experience Bishop Sun's antique study." Dong Guangyi gritted his teeth and scoffed. As soon as he said that, he pounced forward and unleashed a black tortoise's divine fist. Sun Mingyue felt a gurgling force coming from Chu Li's back, which merged with the supreme titanium scripture in her body. Instantly, her cultivation level increased by several fold. Then, she threw a light punch. It was the divine light fist that was activated by the supreme titanium scripture. A white light flashed. The divine light fist had already collided with the black tortoise's divine fist. Bang! Amidst the earth-shattering sound, Dong Guangyi suddenly retreated, his face filled with shock. The grandmasters on the ground around them flew up one after another. They were weightless as if they were plants that were being swept away. They flew 10 meters away and landed on the ground like leaves. Sun Mingyue felt a sense of satisfaction. It had been a long time since they worked together like this. After the two inner energies merged, they gave off a strange sense of power. It was as if they were the only one in the world. No one could surpass them. One punch could split mountains and rivers, and destroy the stars and the moon. Driven by this feeling, she quickly punched out one punch after another. The endless fist shadows were like comets flying across the sky, falling toward Dong Guangyi. Dong Guangyi faced them with a straight face. Although the black tortoise's divine fist was no match, the shadow of a black tortoise floated on his body. He was channeling the black tortoise shield power. Although he did not have the black tortoise shield, the black tortoise shield power was still a strong defensive heart technique. However, as Sun Mingyue's fist force became stronger and purer, Dong Guangyi felt like he could not withstand it. There was a huge difference between having the black tortoise shield and not, but he was not at a disadvantage so quickly. He frowned. He was confused and angry. He did not expect that Sun Mingyue's cultivation level was lower than his, but her fist force was extraordinarily pure and overbearing. He could not withstand it and was forcefully restrained. He had never been so frustrated when he fought with Chu Li. He could only passively take a beating without being able to fight back. The fist force that was as fast as light had no choice but to take it head-on. Every time he took it head-on, he would not be able to dodge it in time. He could only take it head-on. If this vicious cycle continued, he would only be defeated in the end. Ah! He let out an angry roar and his body suddenly swelled up. The shadow of the black tortoise became solid and suddenly burrowed into his body. He did not dodge the incoming divine light fist force. After taking the blow head-on, he threw a punch at Sun Mingyue. Bam! The divine light fist sent him flying. It was Chu Li and Sun Mingyue who suddenly accelerated the circulation of the supreme titanium scripture, doubling its power. In the air, Dong Guangyi shouted angrily, but the corner of his mouth was stained with blood. This was the first time he was so frustrated. He was forcefully suppressed and could not turn the tables, especially by a woman. Sun Mingyue's face under the white veil was smiling. The feeling of working together with Chu Li to plot against someone was too wonderful. It was intoxicating. Chu Li used the life and death scripture to suppress his external appearance. He looked like a grandmaster, but his internal appearance was gradually returning to the enlightened master's boundary. The supreme titanium scripture's depth and purity were not inferior to an enlightened master's. Dong Guangyi was completely suppressed by Chu Li and Sun Mingyue. Chu Li shouted, "Dong Guangyi, aren't you the second best in the world? This is the strength of the second best in the world. What a joke." Dong Guangyi's face darkened. He glared at Chu Li. Sun Mingyue scoffed. "If you leave now, I can spare your life. If you don't blame me for being ruthless." All right. Dong Guangyi took a deep breath and said slowly, "You forced me to use my ultimate move. You're more powerful than Chu Li, leader Sun." Chu Li's eyes lit up. He did not kill Dong Guangyi back then because he wanted to take all of his skills and treasures. Dong Guangyi was like a treasure trove. It was a pity to kill him. Today, he could force another skill out of him. "Make your move." Sun Mingyue glanced at Chu Li and said. Dong Guangyi flashed and appeared in front of Sun Mingyue. He punched out and wanted to meet Sun Mingyue's fist. Chapter 1871. Just as her slender hand was about to touch the red bead, she suddenly paused and gently pushed it away. The red bead was deflected by an extremely soft force, as if an invisible wind had blown over and blown it back. Bang! Dong Guangyi's fist shattered the red bead. Water droplets splashed everywhere and most of them landed on Dong Guangyi's fist. His expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly swung his hand. Then, a flash of cold light flashed past his waist, and a cold light slashed across his fist. TSS! His fist and wrist separated and fell to the ground. His fist flipped twice, and only the pink bone was exposed. His flesh had disappeared, and the bone seemed to be melting quickly. In the blink of an eye, it had turned into a puddle of pink water. Sun Mingyue's hair stood on end, and she was furious. If Chu Li had not warned her in advance to be careful of his tricks and the red bead, she would have been poisoned. She might not have been able to expel such an overbearing and vicious medicine. Seeing that Dong Guangyi could only use self-harm to resist the medicine, she knew that there was no cure. Dong Guangyi had already sealed his wrist to stop the blood from flowing. His face was pale as he stared at Sun Mingyue and gritted his teeth. Good. Good. I will never forget today's lesson. Leader Sun, we will meet again. Then, he suddenly disappeared into thin air. The people on the ground stared at Sun Mingyue with their eyes wide open in disbelief. Dong Guangyi, who was second only to Chu Li, was defeated so thoroughly and miserably. It was worse than facing Chu Li. Could it be that Sun Mingyue's martial arts was stronger than Chu Li's? They could not help but feel disappointed when they thought of this. Chu Li landed on the ground and looked at the grandmasters. He scoffed and turned to Sun Mingyue. Leader, kill them all. Forget it. Sun Mingyue shook her head. An enlightened master's battle shouldn't involve the grandmasters. Chu Li was shocked. Leader, we are enemies with the Black Tortoise Mountain. Letting them go is cruel to us. It's better to kill them. Sun Mingyue frowned and stared at him. Chu Li had a stubborn look. Leader, you're an enlightened master. You can't do anything to them, but I can. Sun Mingyue said, as long as they swear not to go against the Holy Church, I will let them go. Bishop, Chu Li hurriedly said. I've already made up my mind. Say no more. Sun Mingyue scoffed. Yes. Chu Li pretended to be helpless and sighed. Then, he turned around and glared at the others. Swear on it. Count yourself lucky. Normally, even if they were to die, they would not swear an enlightened master's oath. It was too embarrassing, and it would make them look like they had no backbone. Grandmasters were not afraid of death at all. If they died, they could go up to the Grandmaster's boundary without being threatened by him. However, in such a situation, they had no intention of refusing. Sun Mingyue had defeated Dong Guangyi, and they could not help but feel admiration for her. Especially since she had defeated Dong Guangyi as a woman, it was even more admirable. Chu Li watched as they swore their oaths before he turned around and sped away. Sun Mingyue quickly appeared beside him, and a faint fragrance drifted into his nose. He looked straight ahead as he sped forward. Sun Mingyue seemed to be supported by an invisible force as she followed him lightly. Actually, you don't have to help me. Chu Li smiled. Isn't this satisfying? You can even make your name known. Unfortunately, it's just an empty reputation, Sun Mingyue said. I'll inevitably be burdened by it in the future. Chu Li said, you can summon me with just a thought. How is it an empty reputation? Both of them had the supreme titanium scripture as a guide. They could sense each other with just a thought and appear beside each other in an instant. If Sun Mingyue encountered a top-notch enlightened master, he could rush over with just a thought and turn into Zhao Dai to join forces with her. Sun Mingyue shook her head. Chu Li smiled. Don't you want the Holy Church of Light to be more peaceful? Sigh. Forget it. Sun Mingyue nodded. She did not want to carry an empty reputation. The title of the world's second master was indeed a burden, but it was also a great benefit. Others would have some scruples if they wanted to deal with the Holy Church of Light and would not dare to act recklessly. It would greatly benefit the Holy Church of Light. This was the reason why countless people pursued fame. It was not just for fame but also for benefit. When Chu Li saw that she had agreed, he smiled. This was his repayment to Sun Mingyue. The blood dragon tree has grown, Chu Li said. Sun Mingyue's eyes lit up as she sized him up. She chuckled and nodded without saying anything. She was proud that Chu Li could do what others could not. Chu Li said, after a while, when they bear fruit I'll give you a few. How many fruits can they bear? Sun Mingyue asked. Chu Li shook his head. I can't say for now. How many do you need? Sun Mingyue thought for a while and said, 3. Chu Li said, let's see how many fruits you can bear. I'll give you half. He had grown 3 trees. If there were no accidents, he would be able to bear 30 blood dragon fruit. He was not prepared to take all of them for himself, nor did he want to take half of them. After all, Sun Mingyue had obtained the blood dragon tree branch, and he had to raise it by using the life and death scripture. Ultimately, the blood dragon tree was his foundation. Without Sun Mingyue, he would not have obtained it. I don't need that much, Sun Mingyue said. Chu Li shook his head. The world is changing now. The stronger the ability, the better. Sun Mingyue hesitated for a while before nodding slowly. Zheng Shilai paced back and forth in the tent with his hands behind his back. Initially, he and Sun Mingyue were acting as bait, waiting for Chu Li to fall for the trap and enter the tent. Then, they would kill him in one fell swoop. However, Sun Mingyue left halfway and ignored his attempts to stop her. If she continued to stop him, he would definitely fall out with her. This made him furious. He felt that he had been deceived. At this moment, footsteps were heard. He shouted, "Who's outside?" "It's me." Sun Mingyue's cold voice was heard. She lifted the curtain and entered the tent. Zheng Shilai's expression was still grim. He said, "I can't believe that cult leader's son has returned." Sun Mingyue laughed coldly and said, "You did it, didn't you?" "What?" Zheng Shilai frowned. Sun Mingyue said, "It's about Black Tortoise Mountain. You leaked the news to Black Tortoise Mountain and asked them to kill Priest Zhao, didn't you? If I hadn't arrived in time, Priest Zhao would have been killed by Dong Guanyi. You should be satisfied." "Cult leader's son, what kind of person do you think I am?" Zheng Shilai shouted. Sun Mingyue said coldly, "What kind of person do you think I am? Am I that gullible?" Zheng Shilai waved his hand. "There must be some misunderstanding. Is Priest Zhao all right? I almost couldn't make it in time." Sun Mingyue said, "Outsiders don't know about Priest Zhao. Moreover, Black Tortoise Mountain went after the Blood Dragon Tree. Apart from His Majesty and me, who else knows that Priest Zhao obtained the Blood Dragon Tree branch? His Majesty, please don't quibble. You'll only make me look down on you." Sigh. Zheng Shilai shook his head and smiled bitterly. "This is really a misunderstanding. It's very likely that Black Tortoise Mountain has been keeping an eye on the Blood Dragon Tree. When they noticed that something was amiss, they acted immediately. They would rather kill the wrong person than let them go." "I'm very disappointed in His Majesty," Sun Mingyue said coldly. Then, Zheng Shilai hesitated. Sun Mingyue scoffed. "Don't worry. Since I've agreed to it, I won't go back on my word." "That's good." Zheng Shilai smiled. "Were the two of you waiting for me?" Chu Li's voice suddenly sounded from inside the tent. Then, he appeared out of thin air. Zheng Shilai's expression changed. Chapter 1872. Chu Li stood in the tent and looked at Zheng Shilai with a smile, then glanced at Sun Mingyue. Sun Mingyue stood motionless in the same spot. Zheng Shilai said, "Good, you're indeed the world's #1 master." Chu Li chuckled. "I'm flattered. Who can claim to be the world's #1? His Majesty doesn't seem to care about me at all. He purposely set up such a trap to kill me. Am I that easy to kill?" As he spoke, his gaze fell on Sun Mingyue. "Leader's son, how did we end up like this?" Sun Mingyue said nothing. Chu Li shook his head. "Will you only be satisfied if I die?" Sun Mingyue remained silent and looked elsewhere. Sigh. Chu Li sighed and revealed a disappointed look. Zheng Shilai was secretly amused. Chu Li was too sentimental. It was a pity that Sun Mingyue had to kill Chu Li no matter how sentimental she was because of her grandmaster's death. Otherwise, she would not be able to explain it to her master. Between righteousness and selfishness, Sun Mingyue still chose righteousness. No one could say who was right or wrong. However, He felt a little sad for Chuli. He had met such a beautiful woman, but in the end, he was going to be abandoned. He took a deep breath and said calmly, "Chuli, you shouldn't have come." Chuli said, "Isn't this what His Majesty wants? You must have something up your sleeve and think that I'm dead for sure?" "That's right," Jing Shilai said slowly. As he spoke, his aura suddenly converged, as if he had become a person who did not know martial arts. Chuli raised his eyebrows and chuckled. "Looks like you're trying to stall me with words so that you can use your ultimate technique." Jing Shilai's expression changed slightly. He was secretly shocked, but he smiled. "So what if I am? Chuli, do you dare to take a hit from me?" "Of course not." Chuli smiled. He suddenly appeared behind Jing Shilai in a flash and hit him with his palm. Bang! Jing Shilai flew out and spat out a mouthful of blood in the air. He shouted, "Leader Sun!" Sun Mingwe sighed and suddenly stood in front of Chuli. She met his divine light fist. Bam, 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 bam. Chuli and Sun Mingwe exchanged more than 10 punches and palms. The inside of the tent was a complete mess. Everything had been smashed into pieces. The writing table, the armchair, the scrolls and files on the table, and all sorts of furniture had been reduced to powder and scattered all over the ground. Chuli said in a low voice, "Do you really want to go against me?" Sun Mingwe said lightly, "Now that things have come to this, is there still a way out?" "All right. Very well." Chuli said coldly, "As a leader of a church, you have to extinguish your emotions and desires. I'm really impressed." Bang, 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 bang. The two of them exchanged more than a dozen punches. The tent was about to be swept up, but it was blocked by an invisible force. Sun Mingwe and Chuli chatted as they fought. "Why do I have to stop you? Isn't it better to just kill him?" Sun Mingwe said in his mind. Chuli said, "I want to witness his antique study." Under the observation of the omniscient mirror, he saw the surrounding blood-red inauspicious energy surging like blood. It surged towards Jing Shilai and continuously entered his body. Jing Shilai's body was like a whirlpool that continuously absorbed the blood-red inauspicious energy. His body was rapidly becoming stronger, and his aura was getting stronger. Finally, it was like a god's field. However, this extremely dense inauspicious energy was much stronger and more powerful than the inauspicious energy from the formation outside. In just a short while, the temperature in the tent suddenly dropped as if it was an icehouse. This was all due to the dense inauspicious energy. "You really are crazy," Sun Mingwe said impatiently. "He must have the confidence to kill you. It's better not to witness this antique study." Now that Chuli had the black tortoise shield and the black tortoise shield, he could use them together with the supreme indestructible body of Vajra. The strength of his defense was beyond imagination. He also wanted to take the opportunity to test the power of the two technique. Moreover, he also had the black tortoise shield that could block the sky regicide sword. Chuli said, "If I don't completely destroy their military formation, they won't give up. Their ambition will not die. Even if you destroy their military formation, their ambition will not die." Sun Mingwe scoffed. Chuli smiled. "When they are at their wits' end and can't stop me, they will naturally become obedient. Take this." Bam! Sun Mingwe was sent flying. Chuli's supreme Vajrapalm hit her chest. As the supreme Vajrapalm did not have the support of the golden light, its power was greatly reduced. However, it still made Sun Mingwe vomit blood, and the white veil covering her face was dyed red. "Ha ha! Ha ha! Ha ha!" Jing Shilai looked up and laughed. "Chuli, since you're looking for death, I will fulfill your wish. Take this." Jing Shilai's appearance was only slightly pale, as if he was sick. His eyes were bloodshot, as if he had just woken up from a hangover. However, his eyes were bright as fire as he stared at Chuli. He laughed wildly and slapped his palm. The omniscient mirror saw that this palm was dense inauspicious energy. This was turning the surrounding military formations in auspicious energy for his own use. It was indeed a miraculous technique. When enlightened masters and grandmasters entered the military formation, spiritual energy would be cut off and the source of their inner energy would be cut off. Once their inner energy was depleted, they would not be able to replenish it and would be no different from a normal person. The military formation might not necessarily be able to trap grandmasters and enlightened masters. As long as they could escape from the formation before their inner energy was depleted, it would be fine. However, if there were grandmasters and enlightened masters in the military formation and there were more of them, delaying the masters who entered the formation, the result would be extremely fatal. Without inner energy, enlightened masters would not be able to exert their power no matter how strong they were. Formations could not trap enlightened masters. Spiritual energy from the outland was not bound by the spiritual energy of this world. However, military formations were an exception. Inauspicious energy was born from the human heart and soul. When people wanted to kill, the earth would shake and the mountains would not be able to invade. Chu Li used a heavenly king palm to clash with Jing Shilai. As soon as the heavenly king palm was used, the surrounding inauspicious energy surged and formed a palm print to clash with Jing Shilai's palm energy. Boom! An earth-shattering muffled sound was like an explosion above their heads. The big tent shook and was about to be uprooted at any time. Chu Li let out a smile. He did not expect the heavenly king palm to give him such a surprise. Not only could it condense spiritual energy, but it could also condense inauspicious energy. You! Jing Shilai's pale face showed suspicion. He felt that Chu Li's palm was inauspicious energy. It was not a good feeling to have the inauspicious energy enter one's body. He was enduring the pain and trying to get rid of Chu Li in the shortest time possible. Once he got rid of Chu Li, his imperial hegemony was just around the corner. Thinking of this, the original pain was not so painful anymore. It was bearable. Bam 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 bam. The two of them exchanged 20 palms in a row. Sun Mingyue had already retreated to the side. Chu Li scoffed and said, "This is what you're relying on, Your Majesty. Don't be ridiculous. There are still people lying in ambush, right? Let's attack together." All right. Jing Shilai's pale face was extremely gloomy. He realized that he could not take down Chu Li. Sun Mingyue looked like she could not withstand the inauspicious energy and could not help. He could only use his last resort. Chi! Suddenly, a flame rushed out of his sleeve and blasted the big tent to the sky. Bam! A firework exploded in the sky. Kill! The soldiers in the big camp seemed to be boiling and began to practice the military formation. Suddenly, the power of the military formation increased greatly and the inauspicious energy became several times stronger. Chapter 1873. Bam 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 bam. Chu Li and Jing Shilai exchanged palm energy and smiled. This is more like it. Through the tent, he could see that these 100 grandmasters relied on the battlefield, so they were more adapted to the inauspicious energy. Their strength was not affected in the military formation, and the clothes they wore were different, faintly exuding a kind of power. Chu Li felt the power of the military flag on them, as if their clothes were made of military flags. In this way, not only could they suppress the inauspicious energy, but they could also command and use it. They really put in a lot of effort. One must know that the military flag was where the soul of an army was. It was a great waste for them to be used like this. Chu Li, you will die today. Jing Shilai gritted his teeth and sneered. You killed 200 grandmasters from the Jing dynasty before, and there are still 100 outside. If you have the ability, kill them all. Chu Li said lightly, so what if I kill them? Jing Shilai scoffed. This time, it's not you killing them, it's them killing you. How much inner energy do you have left? Chu Li said, more than Your Majesty. As soon as he said that, his palm suddenly turned blue, as if it was smeared with a layer of blue. Zheng Shilai frowned, feeling that it was inappropriate, but he still took it. Bam! Zheng Shilai suddenly froze. Then, a cold light flashed, and Zheng Shilai's head was separated from his body, but there was no blood. "Your Majesty!" Sun Mingyue screamed and scoffed angrily. "Chu Li, how dare you?" Chu Li said coldly, "Zheng Shilai is dead, and you still want to join forces with the Zheng dynasty. It's none of your business who I join forces with, right?" Sun Mingyue said coldly. Hearing the conversation between the two, the 100 grandmasters outside could no longer stay. They fiercely moved forward and waved their palms. Regardless of Chu Li or Sun Mingyue, the palm energy concentrated on the tent, wanting to destroy the people inside along with the tent. TSK. With a light whistle, their movements suddenly slowed down. The space around them had become extremely viscous, and every movement was strenuous. Then, a flash of lightning broke out of the tent and appeared in front of them. Then, they watched as Chu Li wielded his sword and leisurely walked among them. Wherever he passed, the sword would cut off their heads at the same time. One by one, their heads rolled to the ground. In the blink of an eye, not a single one of the 100 grandmasters was spared. All of them died under his sword. Sun Mingyue raised her head to look at the sky, but she did not see the heavenly gate. She turned to look at Chu Li. Chu Li calmly replied, "Their souls have been destroyed, so they can't ascend to the outland?" "Why?" Sun Mingyue was surprised. Chu Li said, "The celestial beings have come to this realm to stir up trouble and start a war so that the grandmasters can ascend to heaven. This is also for the safety of the realm beyond heaven." Sun Mingyue gently nodded and said, "It doesn't matter if we kill these people. They should still be placed in the outland boundary. Why must we destroy them?" "We have to let the grandmasters understand that this path won't work," Chu Li said calmly. Sun Mingyue frowned and said, "Why do you have to do this? If the realm beyond heaven is finished, we won't be spared either." She had always felt that Chu Li had a unique vision and a broad vision. He should not be so disregarding the overall situation. Although the celestial beings had gone overboard, they could ascend to the outland if they died. To the grandmasters, it was not a big deal. It was just that those who had not reached the grandmaster's boundary would suffer. However, there were always winners and losers in everything. This was inevitable. Chu Li smiled faintly and said, "The realm beyond heaven really needs these grandmasters to ascend? They're just being stingy and transferring their losses to this realm." "Why do you think so?" Sun Mingyue was puzzled. Chu Li said, "Think about it, if the Holy Church of Light and the Tempest Temple were to fight, would the Holy Church of Light speed up the recruitment of innate masters and even acquired masters?" Sun Mingyue frowned slightly. Chu Li sneered and said, "How will the acquired masters and innate masters affect the war between the two sects?" Sun Mingyue frowned and shook her head gently. It was the grandmasters and even enlightened masters who decided the outcome of the two sections. As for the acquired masters and innate masters, they were not the main force in the fight. Instead, they were the targets to be protected. They were the seeds and the future. Looking at the situation in the realm beyond heaven, these grandmasters would go up to participate in the war. She had never thought about this problem carefully. Chu Li sneered, "After the celestial beings of this realm die, even if they recover their strength, they will only be rank 9. What can a rank 9 master do in a war with an Azura? It's just a consumable that's going to die. Using 100 grandmasters to get rid of one is just so that the celestial beings don't suffer any more losses. To think that all these grandmasters are so excited to go to the grandmaster's boundary. They think that it's a wonderful thing." Sun Mingyue rolled her eyes at him. She did not realize this problem in the past. She only felt that the realm beyond heaven was in trouble. It was reasonable for the celestial beings to descend to the mortal world to create more grandmasters. Even if they were dissatisfied, it was not to the extent of wanting to kill the celestial beings. After listening to Chu Li's words, she finally understood why Chu Li did not care about the big picture and killed the celestial beings. Chu Li said in a low voice, "I want the Grandmasters to wake up. Otherwise, they will be unscrupulous and even dare to kill me just to ascend to the realm beyond heaven. From then on, I want to see which Grandmaster still dares to act presumptuously in front of me. If they act presumptuously elsewhere, I will still destroy their bodies and souls. This way, you will become the world's public enemy." Sun Mingyue frowned and said, "Why do you have to go this far?" Even if the Grandmasters did not dare to act presumptuously in front of Chu Li, they would still secretly hate him and want to kill him. He would become a sharp sword hanging above their heads, ready to take their lives at any time. They would not dare to act recklessly, and their dissatisfaction would only grow deeper. Chu Li said lightly, "If I don't go this far, the world will not be at peace." Sun Mingyue sighed. They had talked about this last time. She could not persuade him anymore, so she could only lend him a hand. Chu Li suddenly frowned. "You go first." Sun Mingyue asked, "What's wrong?" Chu Li said, "Pretend to escape first." "All right." Sun Mingyue felt that it was inappropriate, but she did not object. The two continued to exchange palms. Then, Sun Mingyue turned into a white light and shot into the distance, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Chu Li let out a sigh of relief and looked up at the sky. The military formation continued to operate, and the soldiers worked hard to practice. The murderous aura was as thick as blood. Suddenly, 3 rays of light fell from the sky and landed in front of Chu Li. The light converged, and the figures of 3 level 1 celestial appeared. Chu Li felt the pressure from them. 3 level 1 celestial at once. The Grandmasters really thought highly of him. All 3 of them were old men. Their appearances were simple and unsophisticated. Their faces were calm and indifferent, and there was not a trace of emotion in their eyes. They looked at Chu Li as if they were looking at a stone. "Chu Li?" the old man in the middle said in a low voice. Chu Li said slowly, "What can I do for you?" "We were ordered to ask you a few questions," the old man said in a low voice. Chu Li nodded. "Please speak." The old man's eyes suddenly lit up like a sword piercing him. He said in a low voice, "You want to go against the Grandmasters?" Chu Li shook his head. The old man's expression relaxed and he said lightly, "You should know the result of going against the Grandmasters." "I've seen it," Chu Li said. The old man said slowly, "That was just a warning." Chapter 1874. The elder saw his smile and felt that it hurt his eyes. He said coldly, "You don't believe it?" Chu Li shook his head. "Of course I believe it. The Grandmaster is supreme. I'm just an enlightened master." "It's good that you know," the elder said coldly. "It seems like you're a sensible person. Why did you do such a thing?" He pointed at the 100 Grandmasters on the ground and shook his head. "How can the Grandmaster forgive you?" Chu Li said, "The Grandmasters are fearless because they can ascend to the Grandmaster. They even dare to kill an enlightened master like me. If I don't kill them, they'll think that I'm afraid of them. If I don't destroy their bodies and souls, how can the dignity of an enlightened master remain?" The elder frowned and stared at him. Chu Li said, "The dignity of an enlightened master is not to be blasphemed. This is the truth everywhere. Can enlightened masters be treated as they please in the Grandmaster?" About that, the elder hesitated. This was indeed a problem. The status of an enlightened master was extremely high. Even if they ascended to the Grandmaster, the status of an enlightened master was still exceptionally high. It was far beyond the average celestial being. That was because an enlightened master had greater potential and would definitely achieve greater things in the future. Even an enlightened master who died young was far beyond the average celestial being. Chu Li said, "The dignity of an enlightened master is not to be blasphemed. The actions of these celestial beings are no different from encouraging the Grandmasters to rebel against the enlightened master. The dignity of an enlightened master is gone. The people are not afraid of death, so how can they be afraid of death? These grandmasters are not afraid of death. To them, an enlightened master is nothing. No matter how powerful they are, they're just helping them ascend to the grandmaster. About that, the elder frowned. He deeply agreed with it. Because he was originally an enlightened master, he was able to become a rank 1 celestial being. He was also very protective of the dignity of an enlightened master. Chu Li scoffed. I don't know what the grandmaster is thinking. They let these celestial beings act so recklessly and cause chaos in the world. The enlightened master has completely lost control. He's a mere figurehead. What's the point of being an enlightened master? The grandmaster has its own considerations. An elder beside him said, as the enlightened master of this world, you should be in awe of the grandmaster. I'm in awe of the grandmasters. Chu Li nodded. But I can't be in awe of the things these celestial beings have done. We will report this to the realm beyond heaven. The old man from before said in a deep voice, but what about this? Jing Shilai is a heavenly deity. How can you destroy his body and soul? As he spoke, he pushed his palms forward. Suddenly, a strange light fell on Jing Shilai's head. Chu Li smiled faintly. The light circulated for a long time before it was extinguished. The faces of the 3 old men darkened. A grandmaster's soul was very useful, but compared to an enlightened master, it was not worth mentioning. An enlightened master was equivalent to tens of thousands of grandmasters, or even hundreds of thousands. Without the soul of Jing Shilai, the Empyrean realm master, it was no different from losing a first-grade celestial. It was a great loss. Even when fighting with Azura realm cultivators, it was rare to lose a level 1 celestial, but they had lost one here. How could they not be angry? Chu Li calmly asked, Seniors, do you know where this is? Where? The old man from before said in a deep voice. Chu Li pointed to his surroundings. This is the Zheng dynasty's military camp, and they've set up a military formation. Jing Shilai set a trap for me to come in and kill me. Within the military formation, he can manipulate the inauspicious energy, and the 3 of you should know how harmful the inauspicious energy is to the soul. He could beat 1, 2, or even 3 level 1 celestials, but he could not beat 10 or even 20. Moreover, he had to guard against the grandmasters attacking his friends and family. Therefore, he would drag it out and ease it if he could. No matter how dissatisfied he was with the heavenly deities, he needed to deal with it in a more rounded way. He could not blindly kill. Killing was only a means, not the end. In the end, he still had to maintain peace in the world. So, Zheng Shilai is up to no good? The old man from before said in a deep voice. Chu Li said, he wants to destroy my body and soul, so I naturally have to pay him back in his own coin. Otherwise, how can I deter others? It makes sense. The 3 old men frowned and slowly nodded. If it was them, they would do the same. If the other party could do it, they could do it too. They could not be soft-hearted. There was no problem with Chu Li's way of doing things, but unfortunately, it was an enlightened master who died. Chu Li said, Seniors, are you here to condemn me? That's not it. They shook their heads. If they really wanted to kill Chu Li, it would not be just the 3 of them. Chu Li nodded. Seniors, you can report my thoughts to the grandmasters. If the grandmasters need manpower, why would they involve innocent people? I have an idea. What idea? Hold a martial arts circle convention, or even a martial arts circle convention every year. Chu Li said calmly, if the grandmasters can give 3 enlightened masters or a huge reward, the people of the martial arts world won't work hard, and the grandmasters won't work hard. The old man in the middle thought for a while and nodded. That's a good idea. Chu Li said, this way it can stimulate the people of the martial arts world to work hard, and it won't involve innocent people. It's killing 2 birds with 1 stone. It's much better than creating a mess and giving the Azuras an opportunity. All right, I'll report your idea later. The old man in the middle nodded. But Chu Li, you have to be careful. You can let it go this time, but if you do it again, there will be punishment. Chu Li fist saluted. The three old men looked at each other and leaped up, instantly turning into 3 rays of light that shot into the sky. A light gate vaguely appeared in the sky and slowly became clearer. The 3 rays of light rushed into the light gate, and then the light gate slowly disappeared. Chu Li felt the murderous intent coming from the divine gate. It was obvious that many people wanted to kill him, but they did not have the chance to come. Chu Li looked at the direction where the divine gate disappeared. He felt that the divine gate had always been in a certain place, and it was not wandering. He turned his head and looked around. The army outside the tent was still practicing. The sound of killing was endless, and the killing intent was shocking. However, with Zheng Xilai dead, the army's military spirit was gone, and they were not as big of a threat. He held back the urge to kill all the soldiers, and rushed into the sky, directly to St. Peace City. In St. Peace City, a dazzling ray of light descended from the sky and landed in the Imperial House. Chu Li entered St. Peace City, and went straight to the Imperial House. He saw a young man standing on the high platform of the Imperial House in the light pillar, his body bathed in clear light, and his aura was constantly rising. The enlightened master's field gradually formed, and he was already an enlightened master. The new enlightened master had already been conferred, and it was almost complete. The young man was handsome, and quite similar to Zheng Donglai. He was burly and strong, different from Zheng Xilai's thin and elegant appearance. A group of guards and maids knelt below the high platform, shouting, "Your Majesty!" Chu Li frowned and looked at the young man. His eyes were determined and his expression was calm. He was not an easy character to deal with. It seemed that Zheng dynasty was prospering, and there were a few outstanding people. It was a pity that they met him. They were born at the wrong time. The light pillar slowly disappeared, and the young man stepped on the void and looked down at the crowd. He said calmly, "You may rise." "Thank you, Your Majesty," the crowd shouted. An old guard came forward and presented a bright yellow dragon robe. "Your Majesty, please change. There's no hurry." The young man waved his hand and said, "You may all leave. Let old General Hu come over." Chapter 1875. The young man slowly landed on the stage and took a step forward. He gently stepped off the stage and walked towards the basilica in the south. When he arrived at the basilica, he calmly sat on a chair and pondered. Chu Li suddenly appeared in the basilica. The young man looked up at Chu Li and frowned. "Who are you?" Chu Li smiled. "The person who helped you ascend the throne? What do you mean by that?" The young man's frown deepened. "You're ridiculous." Chu Li shook his head. "Looks like your brain isn't as fast as Zheng Xilai and Zheng Donglai. You're Zheng Donglai's son, right? Who are you?" The young man's face darkened. He vaguely sensed Chu Li's identity. Chu Li smiled. "Chu Li. You're Chu Li." The young man stood up and raised his hand to slap the armrest of the chair. Chu Li's gaze fell on his hand and he smiled faintly. The young man slowly put his hand down. "You're really Chu Li?" Chu Li laughed. "Is there anyone else who impersonates me? Why are you here?" The young man scoffed. Chu Li said, "You're Jing En, right?" "That's right." The young man scoffed. "How dare you?" Chu Li shook his head and sighed. "You're very lucky." Zheng En was far inferior to Zheng Donglai and Zheng Xilai in terms of intelligence and will. Although he was young, he was impetuous and spoke without thinking. He did not have the bearing of an emperor. Zheng En scoffed. "What do you mean by that? When there's no tiger in the mountain, the monkey is king." Chu Li sighed. "Like father, like son. Zheng En, you're far worse than the previous 2 emperors. You've disappointed me." "What are you disappointed about?" Zheng En scoffed. "You're so fake." Chu Li laughed. "Yes, it may seem fake, but it's the truth. The Zheng dynasty is finished in your hands. Are you going to continue attacking the Ji dynasty? Of course, Zheng Yan said without hesitation. I'll never give up the will of the previous emperor. Chu Li sighed. Does that mean I have to kill you too? If you want to kill me, then kill me. If I even frown, then my surname is not Zheng. Zheng Yan snorted. Chu Li looked at him with his head held high and chest puffed out. Chu Li did not have the intention to kill him. He calmly said, If I don't kill you, you'll kill me, right? We are destined to be enemies. That's right, Zheng Yan said in a deep voice. My father's vengeance is absolutely irreconcilable. If I don't avenge him, I'm not a son. Chu Li smiled. Then how are you going to kill me? You don't have the ability of your father and uncle. You don't even deserve to carry my shoes. Arrogant, Zheng Yan sneered. Do you really think you're invincible? Chu Li said, I don't deserve to be called invincible, but I can easily defeat you. As he spoke, he gently flipped his palm. I will definitely kill you, Zheng Yan said solemnly. While the two of them were talking, an old man clad in armor strode over. He had a long sword at his waist, and his red face was covered in frost. It was obvious that he had just experienced a dusty journey. I, Hu Jing, greet your majesty. The red-faced old man entered the basilica and closed-fist saluted. Old General Hu, you may rise. Zheng Yan stood up and raised his hand. He said in a deep voice, I invited you here to discuss military matters. Your Majesty, the plan now is to boost the morale of the soldiers before you personally go into battle, so that the morale of the generals and soldiers will not be affected, Hu Jing said in a deep voice. If that's the case, there's no way to fight this war. We'll be defeated in one battle. I've decided to personally go into battle. Zheng Yan said in a deep voice, Old General, accompany me. Yes, Your Majesty. Hu Jing closed-fist saluted. He looked up at Chu Li and frowned. Chu Li stood there very conspicuously. He had no respect for the emperor at all. Based on Hu Jing's years of experience, he could tell at a glance that Chu Li still looked down on Zheng Yan. It was intolerable. Chu Li looked at him with a smile. Your Majesty, this is? Hu Jing said in a deep voice. Zheng Yan waved his hand. Old General, you can go first. Chu Li showed a look of approval. Zheng Yan was not completely brainless. At times like this, his brain worked very quickly. He chuckled and said, Your Majesty, why hide it from me? I'm Chu Li. Chu Li. Hu Jing frowned and his expression changed. He shouted, Chu Li? Chu Li of the Ji dynasty? Chu Li nodded and smiled. It seems that General Hu has heard of my humble name. Chu Li, how dare you come into the imperial house? Hu Jing shouted, Why aren't you backing off? As he spoke, he took a step forward and blocked in front of Zheng Yan. The new emperor was an enlightened master, while he was only a grandmaster. Chu Li should have some scruples. Chu Li said, You're a loyal subject. Do you want to retreat from the Ji dynasty? Everything is up to the emperor. Hu Jing scoffed. Chu Li, it's not up to you to decide. Besides, we've always been enemies. Chu Li nodded. All right, if that's the case, I can only kill your new emperor. I'd like to see how many talents the Zheng dynasty has and how many emperors they can produce. Wait, Hu Jing said, Chu Li, you've crossed the line. Why don't you let the militarists decide on their own? Chu Li shook his head. Impossible. If that's the case, do you really want to fight to the death? Hu Jing said coldly. Chu Li said, You can either retreat or kill your emperor. Hu Jing turned his head and said, Your Majesty, why don't we retreat? Old General! Zheng Yan cried out involuntarily. Hu Jing gave him a look. Zheng Yan frowned at him. Hu Jing said, We can retreat, but Chu Li, you can't kill the Zheng dynasty's emperor anymore. Chu Li smiled faintly. You're not qualified to negotiate with me. Retreat or not, you can only choose one. Chu Li, don't push it too far. Hu Jing shouted. Chu Li shook his head. What's the use even if you summon more people? The Imperial House protectors are weak. It's better not to let them die. Alright. Hu Jing gritted his teeth and turned his head. Your Majesty, let's retreat. No. Jing En shook his head slowly. He felt that this was an extraordinary shame and humiliation. The previous emperors had never thought that there would be such a scene today. If he couldn't wash away the humiliation of this scene, he would be unworthy of being a son, unworthy of being a disciple of the Jing family. How could he endure under such circumstances? Your Majesty, we have to lower our heads when we're under someone else's roof. Hu Jing said, he's powerful now. It's better to protect ourselves for now. I can't tolerate it. Jing En gritted his teeth and glared at Chu Li. Chu Li smiled. Since you can't tolerate it, I'll send you on your way. There's bound to be a disciple of the Jing dynasty who can tolerate it. Chu Li. Jing En's eyes were filled with hatred. He wanted to cut Chu Li into 1,000 pieces and fry him in a pot of oil. Chu Li was used to this kind of gaze. He smiled at him. Make an enlightened oath that the Jing dynasty will not attack the Ji dynasty within 100 years. Then, we'll live in peace and we can still be friends. If not, he shook his head. He looked like he had everything in his heart. Your Majesty, Hu Jing said, make the oath. Hu Jing. Jing En's face darkened. You've been trying to persuade me to make the oath. What's your motive? Hu Jing knelt on the ground and knocked his head on the floor. Blood flowed out after 2 knocks. Your Majesty, you must prioritize the Jing dynasty. What's your personal honor compared to the country? Chapter 1876. Chu Li said lightly, Jing En, do you think your courage is commendable? Or do you think I won't be able to wipe out the entire Jing family? Chu Li, don't go overboard. Jing En scoffed angrily. If you don't swear, I'll kill you, Chu Li said calmly. You should know that I can do it. Jing En met Chu Li's calm gaze and his heart tightened inexplicably. Since Chu Li was able to kill his father and his uncle amidst thousands of soldiers and horses, it would be easy for him to kill him here. Compared to his father and uncle, the difference in their cultivation levels was like heaven and earth. He was definitely no match for Chu Li. Even if all the masters from the Imperial House joined forces, it would still be useless. Chu Li said, I don't want to say any more. There are only 2 options. Hu Jing heaved a long sigh. Your Majesty, for the sake of the Jing dynasty, you should swear. All right, I swear. Jing En nodded slowly. Wait. With a shout, 4 old men appeared in the hall. Chu Li looked at the 4 elders with a faint smile. Their eyebrows were snow white, and their faces were as smooth and rosy as a baby's. They were worthy of the name of having white hair and a youthful complexion. Chu Li saw through their identities at a glance. They were celestial beings. Hu Jing frowned at the 4 old men and said in a deep voice, For reverence, don't be rude. These 4 elders were the officials of the Imperial House. Their status was high and they only reported to the Emperor, but Hu Jing did not take them seriously. The 4 elders looked at him deeply, then at Jing En. Chu Li said, I'm surprised that the Jing dynasty's imperial celestial beings are still alive. Chu Li, don't you dare be presumptuous. An old man frowned and snorted, Don't think that we're afraid of you just because you've killed so many celestial beings. This is the Jing dynasty's palace, not a place for you to act presumptuously. Chu Li frowned. He didn't expect there to be such a fearless celestial being. Looking at their bright and resolute eyes, it was clear that they had the will to die. Once the Jing Empire withdrew its troops, these celestials wouldn't be able to complete their mission, so there was no point in staying here. They wanted to return to the realm beyond heaven and be punished as soon as possible. For reverence, shut up! Hu Jing shouted. A heavenly being snorted and said, Hu Jing, where are you from? Are you a citizen of the Jing dynasty or the Ji dynasty? Hu Jing said coldly, Heaven and earth can bear witness to this whose intentions. On the other hand, you high priests are baffling and don't know what you're talking about. Zheng En waved his hand and scoffed. Be quiet. He looked at Chu Li with a solemn expression. His gaze had calmed down and was no longer filled with hatred. Chu Li felt that he had grown a lot in just a short while. It was as if he had suddenly gone from being ignorant to mature and had finally stepped into the world of an emperor. He nodded in satisfaction. He was not afraid of people who were thoughtful and resourceful. He liked to deal with smart people because they could save him a lot of effort, unlike now where he needed a lot of effort to achieve his goal. If Zheng En was an extremely smart person, as long as he appeared and said a few words, he would obediently swear. Zheng En pointed to the sky and swore that he would never invade the Ji dynasty again during his reign, but if the Ji dynasty dared to attack, he would annihilate them. Chu Li furrowed his brows. Zheng En even played a small trick. If the Ji dynasty attacked, they would surely be annihilated. It was not difficult to trick the Ji dynasty into attacking first, then the Zheng dynasty would be able to take advantage of the situation and attack. It was a wishful thinking. Unfortunately, this was easy to overcome. He just had to set a firm rule that the Ji dynasty was not allowed to cross the border. He also needed to suppress the Ji dynasty, otherwise, Leng Shouren would have already sent his troops. Qiao San came out of the imperial residence of King Qing and leisurely went to a restaurant in Fairy's capital. He followed his old habit of ordering a pot of fine wine and 4 plates of appetizers. He leisurely enjoyed 4 hours of leisure time and completely relaxed. Ever since he entered the imperial residence of King Qing according to the young lord's orders, he had been very careful every day, afraid that his identity would be exposed. Fortunately, no one in the imperial residence suspected him because of his cautiousness. However, he did not know what the young lord was up to that he had to find out about the secrets of the imperial residence of King Qing. As he thought about it, he walked upstairs and was about to reach his usual seat. His expression suddenly changed and he was overjoyed as he bowed. Young lord. Chu Li, who was disguised as Zhuge Tian, was sitting quietly by a table. He leaned against the window and leisurely drank his wine. When he heard the noise, he turned around and looked at Qiao San. Qiao San looked fairer than before. He scoffed and said, "Looks like you're living a good life. Young lord, you're out of isolated cultivation." Qiao San bowed. Chu Li replied, "Yes, I've traveled all over the Ji dynasty and finally found something. What about you?" Qiao San showed a proud expression. "Don't worry, young lord. I've gained the trust of everyone in the imperial residence of King Qing. As long as it's not the top secret, I'll definitely be able to find out. What would you like to know, young lord?" Chu Li shook his head. "Let's not talk about the imperial residence of King Qing for now. I want to return to the mountain." "Return to the mountain? Then I'll follow you back to the mountain." Qiao San was startled. That's exactly what I wanted. I wonder how the mountain is doing." Chu Li nodded slowly. "Don't worry, young lord. The mountain has been very peaceful. Everyone is desperately cultivating to master the crouching bull power. I think nothing major has happened. Hill Master's martial arts is very powerful now, no one will be dissatisfied with you." Qiao San smiled. "I hope so. I'll leave tomorrow." "Go and inform them," Chu Li said. "Yes," Qiao San replied. The next morning, the two left Fairy's capital and returned to Crouching Bull Mountain at night. The entire Crouching Bull Mountain was shrouded in silence. Chu Li used the omniscient mirror and saw that the disciples of Crouching Bull Mountain were immersed in their cultivation. They had made great progress, including Murong Liang and Duan Tianya, who had extremely high aptitude. There were 52 grandmasters. This was a huge improvement for Crouching Bull Mountain. If it was in the past, Crouching Bull Mountain would not have been able to stay and would have been eager to rebuild the sect. He used the omniscient mirror to observe carefully and noticed two strangers. One of them was an old man with yellow hair and a yellow beard. His complexion was also sallow. The other was a handsome young man with an extraordinary temperament. It was obvious that he was not an ordinary person. The handsome young man seemed to feel that someone was spying on him. He looked around but did not see Chuli. Chuli frowned. It was a celestial. Even celestials came to Crouching Bull Mountain. These people were everywhere. Xiao San looked up at Crouching Bull Mountain and was filled with emotions. Although he had not left for long, it felt like a long time. He felt an indescribable sense of familiarity and peace of mind when he returned. "Young lord, let's go in quickly and meet everyone," Xiao San said. Chuli shook his head. "Let's go in quietly and not let anyone see us." Xiao San was stunned but did not ask any questions. He nodded. "Let's enter from the back of the mountain." Chuli brought him into Crouching Bull Mountain quietly. Chuli carried Xiao San and returned to his courtyard without alerting the mountain protection formation of Crouching Bull Mountain. The courtyard was clean and spotless. It was impossible to tell that no one lived there. Xiao San sighed. "I'm finally back. The outside world is good, but it's not as good as home." Chuli glanced at him. Xiao San smiled awkwardly. "Young lord, are we going to meet the Hill Master?" "There's no rush. Find a few people close to you and ask about the situation in the mountain." Chuli shook his head. "Yes." Xiao San felt that something was wrong. He closed fist saluted. Chapter 1877. Chuli sat in the middle of the courtyard and used the omniscient mirror to observe the entire Crouching Bull Mountain. The entire Crouching Bull Mountain was quiet, so quiet that it was abnormal. It was not so quiet when he was here before, so he used the omniscient mirror to observe people's minds and looked into Duan Tianya's mind. Through the situation in Duan Tianya's mind, he knew what had happened recently. The arrival of the celestial being and the cultivation of martial arts flourished in Crouching Bull Mountain because the Hill Master gave everyone a goal: to take down Skyward Palace. In the past, they did not think it was a reliable goal. After fighting with Skyward Palace for so many years, they did not have the ability to take down Skyward Palace. However, it was different now. Ever since the young Hill Master promoted the spread of the Crouching Bull insight, everyone gained a lot from it. The better the aptitude, the greater the gain. In just 1 year, they had more than 10 Grandmasters, which was unimaginable in the past. In addition, the appearance of the senior masters from Crouching Bull Mountain boosted the morale of the entire Crouching Bull Mountain. They cultivated even harder, hoping to make great contributions in the battle against Skyward Palace and obtain more Crouching Bull insight. Chuli put away the omniscient mirror, stood up and paced with his hands behind his back. The small courtyard was swept clean, and there was not even a speck of dust. Crouching Bull Mountain's climate was warm, the air was fresh, and dust did not rise. Even if it was not cleaned often, there would not be dust for a long time. He paced silently with his hands behind his back as he stepped on the green brick. He looked up at the sky and his thoughts were running wild. Zhuge Feng was not in Crouching Bull Mountain, so he was obviously not in the mountain. He observed the minds of everyone in Crouching Bull Mountain, including core elders like Murong Chun and Xiaolian. They knew that Zhuge Feng had gone to the surpassing state and had not returned for a while, so they were not worried about him. After a while, Xiao San quietly returned and tiptoed to Chuli. "Young lord, the strength of Crouching Bull Mountain has greatly increased, congratulations." Chuli shook his head. "It might not be something worth celebrating. Go and call Murong Chun and Xiaolian over." "Yes." Xiao San nodded. Chuli said, "Don't let anyone see." "Yes." Xiao San nodded and left quietly. A moment later, Murong Chun and Xiaolian strode in. They gave him a fist salute and smiled. "Young lord, you're finally back. Back then, Chu Li had said that he was going into isolated cultivation for 3 months. In the end, 3 months had passed, and another 3 months had passed. They did not know how many 3 months had passed, and they were worried that Zhuge Tian had been killed. Chu Li gave a fist salute and smiled. Elders, please take a seat. Murong Chuntin and Xia Lian were in high spirits. Their gazes were as sharp as knives. They looked at Chu Li carefully and realized that Chu Li's temperament had changed drastically. He was no longer as feminine as he used to be. He had become bright and strong. The young lord's cultivation level is unfathomable. I'm impressed, Murong Chun praised. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. His son, Murong Liang, had an excellent aptitude as well. Ever since he recovered his martial arts, he had improved by leaps and bounds. His usual demeanor would subconsciously reveal a disdainful attitude toward the young lord. He felt that he had surpassed the young lord and could wash away his previous shame. Looking at it now, although Liang had advanced by leaps and bounds, young master had advanced even faster. Chu Li smiled. There were some fortuitous encounters when you were traveling outside. Both of your cultivation levels improved by leaps and bounds. Does this have anything to do with the 2 seniors who descended from the sky? Yes. They are the founding masters of Crouching Bull Mountain. They have a deeper understanding of the Crouching Bull insight. Our hurdles were easily broken through with just a little guidance from them. How refreshing! Murong Chun nodded. Chu Li said, They are celestials. Both of you know that, right? Of course. Both of them nodded. Xia Lian said, The young lord has an opinion about celestials. Chu Li said slowly, The celestials don't come with good intentions. They want to train more grandmasters and let these grandmasters die. They will ascend to the grandmaster's boundary to fight against the Asuras. Once they die in the hands of the Asuras, they will completely disappear. Xia Lian said, It's that dangerous? How can meat pies fall from the sky? Chu Li said lightly. Both of their expressions changed slightly. Crouching Bull Mountain did not interact much with the outside world. In the past year, they had focused more on cultivation. Everyone was excited and worked hard to cultivate without any distractions. Hence, they did not know that the outside world had begun to fall into chaos. Chu Li said, Did the Hill Master personally say that we should attack Skyward Palace? Yes. Xia Lian said in a low voice, Skyward Palace is the knot in our hearts. We must break it so that we can truly be free of worries. Only then can our cultivation levels improve. This is also the Hill Master's idea. Chu Li nodded lightly. Chu Li did not care much about the killings in the martial arts world. The people of the martial arts world fought fiercely. It was their destiny to die by the sword. As long as innocent people were not harmed, he did not want to care. Where is the Hill Master? Chu Li asked. He is in isolation in the surpassing state. Xia Lian smiled. Young lord, do you want to go and take a look? Chu Li said, I have the same idea. Elder Xia, come with me. All right. Xia Lian nodded. I also want to go to the surpassing state to comprehend and see if I can go to the next level. Congratulations, brother Xia. Murong Chun smiled. Xia Lian said, We are still far from the Hill Master and can't compare to the young lord. I am ashamed. Chu Li smiled. He suddenly frowned and looked outside the door. Knock knock. There was a knock on the door. Chu Li said in a low voice, Come in. The door of the courtyard was pushed open and 2 people walked in slowly. One had yellow eyebrows, a yellow beard, and a yellow face. The other was handsome and had an extraordinary aura. The yellow-faced elder walked at the front with a serious expression. The young man behind him smiled as he looked at Chu Li. Senior. Murong Chun and Xia Lian quickly stood up and fist saluted. The yellow-faced elder waved his hand. No need. Chu Li stood up and fist saluted. Zhuge Tian greets the 2 seniors. You are the young lord Zhuge Tian? The yellow-faced elder asked. I am Zhuzio. The handsome young man smiled. Qin Zhao, I have heard a lot about the young lord. You are indeed a talented man. Chu Li smiled. Senior Qin, you flatter me. I heard that you have killed many innocent girls, Zhuzio said in a low voice. Chu Li was stunned. He stopped smiling and his face turned gloomy. The surrounding air seemed to have become colder. Zhuzio said, even if you are the young lord and open the inside of Crouching Bull to everyone, it does not offset the evil you have done. Chu Li squinted his eyes and said, Senior Zhu, you mean? You are not fit to be the young lord of Crouching Bull Mountain. Zhuzio scoffed. You are not fit to be the hill master of Crouching Bull Mountain. Chu Li chuckled. If I am not fit, who can be the hill master? Choose the best, Zhuzio said coldly. There are many heroes in Crouching Bull Mountain. It is not difficult to choose one to be the hill master. Chu Li shook his head. It seems that Senior Zhu is going to be the Grand Hill Master of Crouching Bull Mountain. Don't spout nonsense. I am wholeheartedly working for Crouching Bull Mountain, yet you say such harsh words. You are evil. Zhuzio frowned. Chu Li said, Crouching Bull Mountain is decided by the Hill Master, not you. Whether I am qualified to be the Hill Master, although you are a senior of Crouching Bull Mountain, you have no right to interfere. Sigh. Murong Chun and Xia Lian looked at each other helplessly. Chapter 1878. The Hill Master had said that Zhuge Tian was not qualified to inherit the Hill Master's position. Later on, everyone pressured the Hill Master and said good things about the young lord. Moreover, the young lord's martial arts skills were better than the Hill Master's, and he could help Crouching Bull Mountain block a disaster. In addition, the young lord promoted the spread of the Crouching Bull insight, which benefited everyone. Hence, no one said anything bad about the young lord. It was a matter of course for the young lord to inherit the Hill Master's position. No one objected to it. Even if they did, they kept their opinions to themselves under the influence of the Crouching Bull insight. Ever since the two elders arrived at Crouching Bull Mountain, they did not show their faces and did not interfere with the affairs of Crouching Bull Mountain. It was as if they were secluded elders who did not care about the affairs of the world. However, if anyone had any difficulties in martial arts, they would give them pointers. They would talk about martial arts for 2 hours every day. All disciples could listen and ask questions. Under their pointers, everyone's martial arts skills improved so quickly. If not many could truly understand the essence of the Crouching Bull insight. After all, not all disciples of Crouching Bull Mountain were geniuses. Therefore, everyone was extremely grateful and respectful towards these two seniors. Even Murong Chun and Xia Lian felt grateful towards them. If the two elders opposed the young lord to inherit the Hill Master's position, the young lord would be in danger. Everyone might not oppose the two elders. The Hill Master was authoritative, and everyone obeyed him. The two elders were not bad either, but the young lord was much worse. Humans were prone to forgetfulness. Even without the young lord, they would not have been able to learn the Crouching Bull insight. However, compared to being able to comprehend the Crouching Bull insight, the two seniors still deserved more credit. It would be fine if there was no conflict between the two, but once there was, their thoughts would lean towards the two seniors who had interacted with them more and helped them more. Chu Li used the omniscient mirror and saw what Murong Chun and Xia Lian were thinking. He furrowed his brows. He did not expect the two celestials to be so powerful. They had unknowingly taken control of Crouching Bull Mountain. No matter what, as long as I'm alive, I will not tolerate someone like you becoming the Hill Master. You'll be the shame of Crouching Bull Mountain. If I don't do anything, I'll be letting down my ancestors. Zhuzio said. Chu Li shook his head. If you can make the Hill Master change his mind, I have nothing to say. The Hill Master has agreed with me. Zhuzio smiled. Chu Li smiled. You've harmed the Hill Master, haven't you? You! Zhu Ziyu's expression changed slightly as he shouted, "You're too hateful, how can you have such thoughts?" Chu Li said calmly, "I haven't seen the Hill Master for a long time, and you're even making decisions for the Hill Master. Isn't it because the Hill Master isn't around, or because you're just a figurehead? Just a puppet?" You. Zhu Ziyo pointed at Chu Li. His aura surged and there was a faint light flickering on his body. Chu Li said, "Why, are you angry now that I've hit the nail on the head?" As he spoke, he shook his head and said, "I came from the outside, so I know what you celestial beings are thinking. You are the seniors of Crouching Bull Mountain, yet you use Crouching Bull Mountain as a tool to gain merit. How infuriating!" Zhu Ziyo narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "Every word you say is sharp. No wonder you can confuse everyone with your conduct. You really have a sharp tongue." Chu Li extended his hand. "Seniors, you're not welcome here. Please leave." "Young lord." Murong Chun and Xia Lian hurriedly interrupted him. If he really chased the two seniors out, there would really be no turning back. From then on, they would become enemies. That would be a disaster for Crouching Bull Mountain. Originally, the morale was high and they wanted to attack Skyward Palace. After this incident, the morale would be greatly reduced, and the attack on Skyward Palace would be a failure. Zhu Ziyo turned around and walked out. He said in a low voice, "I'll ask for everyone's opinion. Do you want to remove your identity as the young lord first?" Qin Zhao followed him and shook his head without saying a word. Ever since they entered the courtyard, Qin Zhao did not say a word. He only smiled and looked at Chu Li, as if he wanted to see through his depth and thoughts. Chu Li, however, was very calm. The life and death scripture and the heavenly demonic power were combined, so he had almost no flaws. Moreover, Qin Zhao had never seen him before. As for his depth, he was also a top-notch master among grandmasters. However, compared to the two celestial beings, he was still a notch lower. Chu Li sneered. "Let's see what everyone has to say." It was impossible to remove his identity as the young lord. Everyone might be hesitant about whether he could become the Hill Master. After all, he had a bad record. However, becoming the young lord was not a problem. After all, the Hill Master was Zhuge Feng. Everyone respected the Hill Master, Zhuge Feng. He was dignified enough to protect Zhuge Tian to become the young lord. "Then let's wait and see." Zhu Ziyo scoffed and walked away in big strides. Qin Zhao left with him. Chu Li stared at the door with a gloomy face. Murong Chun and Xia Lian sighed. Xia Lian frowned. The two elders have indeed overstepped their boundaries. The Hill Master's position is not up to them to decide. He was in favor of Chu Li becoming the Hill Master. Murong Chun sighed. "This is inevitable. However, I believe that after they get to know each other and know how great the young lord is, they will change their mind." Xia Lian glared at him in dissatisfaction. Chu Li said, "Then let's see how they make a fuss. The two elders do not have to participate." "This." Xia Lian frowned. Murong Chun said, "The key is still the Hill Master. As long as the Hill Master can handle it, they will not be able to do anything." "Yes, I will meet him as soon as possible," Chu Li said. "We will depart in 3 days," Xia Lian said. "I will make some arrangements. We will depart as soon as possible." Chu Li nodded. Bang! As they were talking, the courtyard door was slammed open. Qiao San stumbled into the courtyard. Blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. "Qiao San!" Chu Li scoffed. He crossed 10 meters in one step and helped him sit up. Chu Li sat behind him on the green brick floor and placed his palms on his back to channel. Spiritual energy was already flowing into him. The cloud-slashing power's inner energy was quickly devouring the celestial palm energy. Qiao San's pale face slowly regained its color. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. "Young lord." Chu Li scoffed. "Don't talk. Close your eyes and channel." Qiao San could only endure it. He closed his eyes and channeled his inner energy. Murong Chun and Xiao Lian looked at Qiao San in surprise. Qiao San's status was slightly superior. He was originally the Hill Master's wife's personal scribe, and he later served the young lord. Compared to the other disciples of the Crouching Bull Mountain, his relationship with the Hill Master was closer. Even if the others did not care about him, they still had to show him some respect. Up until now, no one had attacked Qiao San. Yet, he was so heavily injured. Chu Li's face was as dark as steel. His green robe fluttered even though there was no wind. After 15 minutes, Chu Li slowly retracted his palms. His face was gloomy. "Young lord, who hurt Qiao San?" Murong Chun and Xiao Lian asked. "I didn't hurt him. I wanted to kill him. If he didn't have an escape skill, he would be dead by now," Chu Li said coldly. "Who has such a deep grudge against Qiao San?" Murong Chun and Xiao Lian were surprised. Chu Li laughed coldly. "Elders, you should have guessed it." Chapter 1879. Who else could it be if not them? Chu Li asked. This. Murong Chun shook his head helplessly. Xiao Lian did not look too pleased. Murong Chun asked, "Did Qiao San do something to anger them?" Chu Li chuckled and looked at Murong Chun sharply. "So, if Qiao San did something wrong, they can kill him?" "About that." Murong Chun looked embarrassed. Xiao Lian said, "Young master, let's put this aside for now. We'll talk about it when the Hill Master returns." He felt that the young master could not defeat the two celestials. Chu Li said, "That's good. Elder Xia, Elder Murong, you don't have to waste your time with me. Go on with your work." "We'll take our leave then," Xiao Lian said. Both of them left the courtyard. As they walked side by side on the path in the forest, Xiao Lian sighed and shook his head. He felt that Crouching Bull Mountain would not be peaceful from now on. He was afraid that there would be a huge commotion. Murong Chun asked, "Brother Xia, what should we do?" "Of course we'll stand on the young master's side." "Murong, don't be stupid. The two seniors are just seniors and they're celestials. They're not on our side," Xiao Lian said without hesitation. "If it weren't for the two seniors, Crouching Bull Mountain would not be so powerful." "We can't be ungrateful, right?" Murong Chun said. "We're grateful to them. But we can't just listen to them, especially when it comes to the removal of the Hill Master. It's only right that the young master takes over after the Hill Master. No one has any objections, but they just had to stick their noses into it." Xiao Lian nodded. "Sure." Murong Chun put a finger to his lips and looked around. He lowered his voice and said, "Brother Xia, lower your voice. What's there to hide?" Xiao Lian scoffed. "I'll say this even in front of the two seniors. Although the young master has done bad things, he's turned over a new leaf. He's wise and powerful. He can definitely strengthen Crouching Bull Mountain. But he's still a bad person." Murong Chun sighed. "If Crouching Bull Mountain grows stronger in the future, it'll become a laughingstock. We won't be able to hold our heads up high. At the end of the day, it's still you, Murong, who doesn't want the young lord to ascend the throne," Xiao Lian said coldly. Murong Chun said, "I think it's a good thing for the young lord to inherit the throne. Even if he doesn't inherit the throne, there are still benefits to it. In short, he's stuck between a rock and a hard place. He's not as naive as you, Brother Xia. You're too ambitious." Xiao Lian laughed coldly. "But don't worry. No matter what, even if the young master doesn't ascend to the throne, Murong Liang won't have a chance." "You?" Murong Chun's expression changed drastically. He glared at him angrily. "Don't go overboard with your words." "I'm not going overboard at all," Xiao Lian sneered. "Do you dare to say that you don't have such thoughts?" "I can't be bothered to talk to you." Murong Chun turned around and left. Xiao Lian stood where he was as he watched Murong Chun leave. He shook his head. Murong Chun was a very talented man, but he was also very selfish. It really made people feel helpless. As soon as he returned home, his daughter, Xiaowei, ran over. "Dad, who are you angry with?" Her graceful figure was wrapped in a pink robe, and the pink color made her beautiful face look as fair as jade, making her even more charming. Xiao Lian shook his head and smiled. "It's that old man, Murong. Are you going out to play today?" Xiaowei said. "Duan Tianyao and the others are going to compete. I'm going to watch." Go ahead." Xiao Lian nodded. "But you can go and see the young lord." "Young lord?" Xiaowei was stunned. She immediately reacted. "The young lord has returned to the mountain?" "He just returned," Xiao Lian replied. Xiaowei scoffed. "Why didn't you tell us that you're back? You're sneaking around. The young lord has his own difficulties." Xiao Lian shook his head and sighed. "It's better if you don't know about these things. Has the young lord's martial arts improved?" Xiaowei puffed out her chest. "Our martial arts have improved by leaps and bounds. It can't be that we've surpassed the young lord, right?" Xiao Lian shook his head and laughed. He waved his hand and said, "Go on, go on." Xiaowei wrinkled her nose. She was very displeased with Xiao Lian's attitude. It was as if what she said was ridiculous. All of them had improved by leaps and bounds. Their abilities had increased to an unbelievable level. No matter how strong the young lord was, it was impossible for him to be stronger than them. They had the guidance of a master and the crouching bull insight. The young lord, on the other hand, had isolated himself to explore. This gave her the confidence to surpass the Zhuge Tian that Chu Li disguised as. Xiao Lian turned and left the courtyard. He was going to the basilica to make arrangements for his departure. Xiaowei stood at the door and hesitated for a moment. In the end, she did not look for Chu Li directly. Instead, she went to a small forest. The small forest was located halfway up the mountain. It was lush and there were no small paths. Xiaowei used her light body technique to glide over the treetop. After 200 meters, she landed lightly. It was a spacious and flat martial arts field surrounded by lush trees. It was extremely secluded. There were 3 young men practicing on the field. When they performed the crouching bull punch, shadows flashed and a green bull could be vaguely seen flashing within. The most handsome of the 3 punches was the most solid. The green bull looked no different from a real one except that it was 1 size smaller. The 3 of them stopped when they saw Xiaowei. Xiaowei came to them and said, "The young lord has returned to the mountain." The 3 of them were shocked. The most handsome young man said in a low voice, He finally returned to the mountain." Xiaowei said, "Murong Liang, do you want to challenge him?" "Of course." Murong Liang gritted his teeth and said hatefully, "I must defeat him." Xiaowei said, "Looking at my father's expression, the young lord's martial arts must be very high. If you fight him again, aren't you afraid that he will cripple you again?" "What's there to be afraid of?" Murong Liang scoffed. "Cultivating martial arts again is not necessarily a bad thing. After I started cultivating again, my foundation became stronger. That's why I improved so quickly. You guys can do the same." He was sure that Chu Li would not kill him. At most, he would cripple his martial arts. As long as he did not go overboard, his martial arts would not be crippled. Xiaowei had a look of approval on her face. "That's a real man. All right, let's go and meet him." Chu Daji and Zhou Heng nodded vigorously. They were eager to try. The 4 of them glided through the small forest and arrived outside Chu Li's courtyard. Just as they were about to knock, the door suddenly opened. Chu Li's voice came from inside. "Come in." The 4 of them frowned and looked at each other. They did not sense anyone in the courtyard. They only knocked with the intention of giving it a try. They did not think that there would really be someone. After trying, they knew that their cultivation level was still not as high as the young lord's. This made them extremely dissatisfied. They felt that they had already reached an unbelievable level of advancement. It was impossible for anyone to be faster than them. They entered the courtyard with their heads held high and saw Chu Li sitting in the pagoda drinking tea. He raised his head and looked at them casually. Chu Li's gaze swept across the five of them. They felt as if their internal organs were being penetrated by his gaze. He could see everything about them. Chu Li retracted his gaze and said lightly, "Everyone, how have you been? When did the young lord return?" Xia Wei scoffed. She realized that the young lord's temperament was becoming more and more dignified. He was more and more like a hill master. She felt an inexplicable sense of pressure when she stood in front of him. This made her very angry. Her clear eyes revealed a hint of provocation. Chu Li said, "I just returned. Do you want to compete with me?" "Yes." Xia Wei scoffed. "I want to see what the young lord has gained from your isolated cultivation." Chapter 1880. The four of them were furious. Although they knew that they were no match for Zhuge Tian and that their cultivation level was slightly lower, they still had to try. The crouching bull power was extraordinary and it was not impossible for them to defeat someone stronger than them. They must have a deeper understanding of the crouching bull insight than Zhuge Tian. They had the guidance of the masters from Crouching Bull Mountain, so they had a deeper understanding of the crouching bull insight. On the other hand, young Lord Zhuge Tian was cultivating alone. No matter how talented he was, he could not compare to the masters from Crouching Bull Mountain. Hence, the outcome of the battle was still unknown. However, the young lord looked down on them. It was intolerable. They clenched their fists and stared at Chu Li in dissatisfaction. Chu Li chuckled. "Why don't we go one by one?" "I'll do it." Murong Liang scoffed. Chu Li looked him up and down. "If you can take one strike from me, you win. Watch my fist." Murong Liang roared and used the crouching bull fist. A clear and realistic shadow of a green cow shot towards Chu Li. A cold gleam flashed across Chu Li's waist. The sword pierced through the green bull's shadow and arrived in front of Murong Liang at an even faster speed. Murong Liang wanted to dodge the attack. He screamed desperately in his mind, unwilling to let the tip of the sword pierce him. Unfortunately, his body froze involuntarily as he watched the tip of the sword coming towards him. The tip of Chu Li's sword stopped in front of his throat and returned to its scabbard. A small red dot appeared on Murong Liang's throat. It quickly spread and a drop of blood gushed out. However, it was only one drop of blood. Chu Li looked at him calmly without saying a word. Murong Liang's face turned red as he stared at Chu Li. "What sword technique is that?" "Cloud-slashing divine sword," Chu Li said. "Do you want to continue?" "No need. I'm no match for you." Murong Liang scoffed. He was angry, but he felt guilty. He was afraid that Chu Li would cripple his martial arts again. If Chu Li dared to cripple him once, would he dare to do it again? As for the fact that crippling one's martial arts and cultivating again would strengthen one's foundation, it was all for the sake of others. In fact, if one were to cripple one's martial arts and cultivate again, it would be torturous and extremely painful. Chu Li glanced at the other three and finally stopped at Xia Wei. "Do you want to come?" "Humph, no need, I'm no match for you." Xia Wei rolled her eyes at him. Even though her martial arts were not as good as Chu Li's, she did not show any signs of fear, and did not give him a good look. Chu Li looked at Chu Daji and Zhou Hang. "What about you two? Do you want to give it a try? How about the two of us attack together, young master?" Chu Daji said. Chu Li nodded. "Come." Chu Daji and Zhou Hang looked at each other for a moment before pouncing towards Chu Li. They used their crouching bull punch from both sides at lightning speed. Chu Li shook his head and swung his sword lightly. Chi-chi. With a light whistling sound, the two fist shadows disappeared without a trace. Chu Daji and Zhou Hang gritted their teeth and suddenly waved their fists. Suddenly, the shadow of a green bull appeared between their fists. The two green bulls merged together in the air and shrunk before disappearing without a trace. Chu Li raised his eyebrows and revealed a satisfied expression. His sword flashed like water and a green bull the size of a kitten appeared in the void. Then, it burst like a bubble and disappeared without a trace. Chu Li said calmly, "Forget it. It's useless. Don't waste your energy." Chu Daji and Zhou Heng sighed and helplessly let go of their hands. They closed-fist saluted. "Young master is brilliant," Chu Li said. "Is this the crouching bull insight that you cultivated? How disappointing. Young master's crouching bull insight is stronger than ours?" Murong Liang was unconvinced. "Young master's swordsmanship is powerful and we can't compare, but the crouching bull insight might not be the same. Looks like you guys are really not convinced." Chu Li shook his head and suddenly punched out. "Moo!" The sound of a bull's roar echoed in the air. Then, a huge and strong green bull appeared in front of them. It was a few times bigger than a real green bull and looked like a giant elephant. The green bull's eyes shone brightly as if it was alive and had spiritual intelligence. This made them widen their eyes in disbelief. Bang! Wherever the green bull passed, 2 white marks appeared on the ground. It crashed into the south wall, and a large part of the wall collapsed. Xia Wei and the other 3 widened their eyes. Chu Li retracted his fist and shook his head. "This wall has been in disrepair for a long time. It was renovated last month." Xia Wei scoffed. She regained her composure and rolled her eyes at Chu Li. "Young master, how did you cultivate the crouching bull insight to this level?" Chu Li said, "Cultivating martial arts requires hard work, but talent and comprehension are more important." The 4 of them looked helpless. What he meant was that they did not have enough comprehension, so they could not cultivate to this level. Chu Li continued, "The crouching bull insight still needs to be understood by oneself. Others' guidance is like scratching an itch through a shoe, it's not that useful." If he had said this before the battle, they would definitely have scoffed at him, thinking that he was jealous of the respect the crowd had for the 2 seniors. But now they had no choice but to believe him. He had never received any guidance, and had relied entirely on his own comprehension to train to this level. Chu Li said, "What do you think of the 2 seniors?" "Of course they deserve everyone's respect." Chu Daji smiled. "The 2 seniors don't want anything but to strengthen the crouching bull mountain." "How admirable!" Murong Liang shook his head disapprovingly and smirked. Chu Li said, "How naive." "Murong Liang, what do you think?" "Well, it's hard to say." Murong Liang did not want to be the first to stand out. He did not believe that there were people who wholeheartedly cared about the public. There must be a reason why they helped the crouching bull mountain, it was just that no one knew about it. Chu Li said lightly, "They are celestial beings. You should open your ears and listen to the sounds outside. See what those celestial beings are doing. Please enlighten us, young master." Zhou Heng closed-fist saluted. Chu Li shook his head. "You may not believe what I say. It's better for you to ask around. If there's nothing else, you can continue cultivating." Xia Wei pursed her bright red lips and glared at him before turning to leave. The other 3 quickly followed her out of the courtyard. Xia Wei left the courtyard and suddenly stopped. She turned to stare at the door and stomped her feet angrily. "Junior sister Xia, although the young master is as arrogant as ever, his cultivation level is unfathomable. In my opinion, he might not be inferior to the 2 seniors," Zhou Heng said. Xia Wei scoffed. "What does his cultivation level have to do with me? I'm going back first." She turned and left, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Zhou Heng looked at Chu Daji and Murong Liang in confusion. Murong Liang scoffed. "Junior sister Xia has high standards. Let's go and cultivate." After being defeated by Chu Li, they did not feel discouraged. Instead, they were in high spirits and wanted to cultivate even harder. They thought to themselves that they did not have the young master's comprehension. It was better for them to cultivate harder. As long as they put in the effort, their cultivation level would definitely increase, and their comprehension would come naturally. It was a stupid idea, but it was also a good one. Chu Li nodded in satisfaction. If he could convince them, it would be easier to convince the others in the future. Once they were convinced, it would be easier for him to control the crouching bull mountain. He disappeared in a flash and appeared on the island of the High Duke's public house. He went straight to the forest at the corner of the island and saw 3 blood dragon trees standing proudly. There was no other vegetation within 10 meters of them. It was barren, making the 3 trees look lonely. Chapter 1881. Out of the 3 blood dragon trees, only one was the most vigorous while the other 2 were sickly and lacked vitality. He shook his head. The blood dragon trees were unusually overbearing and devoured all the spiritual energy around them. Even their own kind were no exception, as they insisted on devouring each other. Even though he had taken precautions and kept the 3 blood dragon trees far away from each other, he still could not stop their repulsion. Like repelled each other and did not allow the other to live. They all wanted to devour each other. In the end, the tree in the middle was the most vigorous while the 2 beside it were not. It was as if the one that was attacked from both sides had won but the 2 that joined forces had lost. It was really illogical. Chu took a closer look. The one in the middle was a living branch that he had obtained. The other 2 were withered branches. Later on, he used the life and death scripture to reverse life and death and revive them. In the end, they still could not compete with the first one. He sighed. Could it be that it was impossible to defy fate and that life and death were fated? Schweling fluttered over. Young master, what's up with these 2 trees? I've tried my best, but I still can't make them flourish. Chu said, the 3 trees are fighting and the winner has been decided. Then should we separate them? Schweling asked. She had encountered such overbearing spirit herbs before and did not allow their own kind to grow. Chu nodded. Plant them on the 3 sides of the island. Apart from the south, plant one of each on the east, west, and north sides. Yes. Schweling nodded and immediately began to work. Chu helped. After separating the 3 blood dragon trees, Chu sat on the small island and began to channel spiritual energy. He used the life and death scripture to stimulate the life and death of the 3 blood dragon trees and many soaring grass to speed up the passage of time. The blood dragon fruit began to grow bit by bit, but its color did not change. It was still greenish-black and inconspicuous. Just by looking at it, it was hard to imagine that it was so amazing. He worked without rest for a day and then returned to the small courtyard on Crouching Bull Mountain. As long as the blood dragon fruit was ready, he would be able to start his own plan to nurture a large number of grandmasters. From then on, he would be able to free himself and cultivate in isolation. The Heavenly Star Insight Technique and the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture both required time to cultivate diligently. This was especially so for the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture. Forming the Chakravarti Pagoda in one's body required a large amount of time. It was not something that could be formed in a short period of time. One could not be lazy about it, nor could one rely on one's comprehension to make up for it. One could only put in effort bit by bit and pour their blood into it. If he had to do everything himself, how would he have the time to improve himself? There would be endless troubles that he could not handle. How would he have the time to cultivate? He would always be surpassed by others. When that time came, it would be too late for him to cry. Being humiliated and bullied was secondary, and he might not even be able to protect Shao Qi and the others. At dawn, not long after Chu returned to the courtyard, Huang Tao, Duan Tianyao, and the others came over to ask Chu for advice on martial arts. Chu understood that they must have found out about Murong Liang and the others' defeat. Hence, he did not hesitate to defeat everyone with a single move. No one was able to last more than a single move. Their expressions were ugly and somewhat ashamed. Many people once thought that they had already surpassed Zhuge Tian. They thought that with their own abilities, it was very possible that they could surpass Zhuge Tian. The effect of Zhuge Tian's isolation was definitely not as good as the effect of guidance from a master. However, reality slapped them hard in the face and made them understand that geniuses were geniuses and could not be judged by common sense. Chu Li looked at them. Most of them looked dejected. It was obvious that they all wanted to surpass him. It was normal for young people to have such thought. They were arrogant and would not submit to others. However, these young people were the cream of the crop in the mountain. Almost all of the newly promoted grandmasters were included. The remaining 2 or 3 newly promoted grandmasters were old men who were almost 100 years old. They were originally hopeless, but because of the guidance from the Celestial, they became grandmasters. These grandmasters were extremely grateful to the 2 Celestials. They were definitely on their side. Chu Li did not think about fighting for them. As long as he could pull these young people to his side and make them part of his force, it would be enough. Becoming the Hill Master was the most important step. Bang! Suddenly, there was a muffled sound. Qiao San staggered into the courtyard. He fell heavily on the ground and could not get up. Blood kept flowing out from the corner of his mouth. Chu Li's expression suddenly turned gloomy. He took a step forward and stood in front of Qiao San. He quickly slapped his body a few times and then helped him up to sit on the green brick floor. Chu Li then sat cross-legged behind Qiao San and began channeling to heal his wounds. Duan Tianya and the others curiously gathered around. They were also curious about who dared to hurt Qiao San. This was no different from slapping the young lord's face, or even the Hill Master's face. After a quarter of an hour, Chu Li let go of his palms and let out a long breath. The white fog formed from the foul air did not dissipate. It was like a white waterfall that shot far away and rebounded when it landed on the ground. "Young lord?" Duan Tianya asked. Chu Li said in a low voice, "It was done by the 2 Celestials of Crouching Bull Mountain." "How is this possible?" Duan Tianya and the others were shocked. In their eyes, these 2 seniors were extremely kind. They almost never lost their temper. How could they injure Qiao San so badly? It seemed like not only did they injure him, but they also wanted to take his life. Chu Li replied calmly, "Why not? They see me as a thorn in their side and want to cripple me, the young master. Qiao San is my scribe, so beating him up is the same as beating me up. It's also a show of authority and a way for me to retreat." "Young lord." Duan Tianya hesitated. Chu Li waved his hand. "Forget it. You don't have to get involved in this matter. Go ahead." "Young lord, we are indebted to these 2 seniors." Duan Tianya thought about it and said, "It's not good to say anything." Chu Li nodded and said lightly, "You don't have to do anything." Duan Tianya and the others sighed in relief. Chu Li raised his voice and shouted, "Zhuzio, Qin Zhao, how dare you hurt my scribe? Do you think I'm easy to bully?" His voice was like a bronze bell that echoed in the sky above Crouching Bull Mountain. It was clearly heard by everyone. The people of Crouching Bull Mountain were shocked. They did not expect the young lord to have a conflict with the 2 seniors as soon as he returned. It was probably going to be a fight between a dragon and a tiger. "Zhuge Tian, how dare you!" Zhuzio's shout was heard. Zhuzio and Qin Zhao turned into 2 rays of light and flew across the sky. They appeared in Chu Li's courtyard. They stood in the sky and saw a group of young men following Chu Li. They were all grandmasters. They could not help but feel gloomy. Could it be that Zhuge Tian had already recruited these young disciples? These young disciples were all heroes. They were grandmasters and this was their merit. Now they were crowding around Zhuge Tian. They felt betrayed. Their cold gazes swept across Duan Tianya and the others. Almost 30 young men looked uncomfortable and closed-fist saluted them. Zhuzio's yellow face cleared up. He knew that they did not completely betray him. They were still grateful for his guidance. Chu Li unsheathed his sword and turned into a ray of light that shot towards Zhuzio. The light of the sword reached Zhuzio's chest in an instant. Zhu Zio wanted to dodge, but he realized that he could not move. Chu Li's sword was too fast. His eyes were fooled by the light of the sword. It was beyond imagination. It was too late for him to dodge. The tip of the sword pierced his chest. Zhu Zio's expression did not change. Even if it really pierced him, it was rare for a mortal's sword to hurt a celestial. It could not hurt him at all. Unless it was a strange treasure sword or a strange technique, such as heaven-killing sword or heaven-killing scripture. TSS. The tip of the sword appeared from his back. Stop. Qin Zhao's expression changed. He thought the same as Zhu Zio. He thought that it would be fine even if the tip of the sword pierced him. However, he did not expect Chu Li's sword to be so strange. The strong body of a celestial was not affected at all by the sword and was pierced directly. Chapter 1882. Chu Li dodged and dodged Qin Zhao's punch. He pulled out his sword and turned around to stab him. Tisk! Qin Zhao's eyes widened as he looked at the sword that pierced his heart. Chu Li pulled out his sword and retreated. He looked at the two celestial men calmly. Zhu Zio and Qin Zhao stared at Chu Li in disbelief. They felt like they were hallucinating. Although they wanted to kill Qiao San, they did it to warn Chu Li that martial arts were the most important. Chu Li's martial arts were weak, so he had to listen to them. Otherwise, Qiao San would be an example. Hence, they did not take Chu Li seriously. Chu Li suppressed his cultivation level. The Crouching Bull Mountain disciples felt that he was unfathomable. However, the two celestial men did not think that he was a threat. They could take him down or even kill him. That was because they did not take Chu Li seriously. They thought that a warning would make Chu Li realize the reality and listen to them. If Qiao San was not good at escaping, he would have been killed. To them, Qiao San was just a servant. Killing him was the best way to warn Chu Li. They did not think that Chu Li could threaten their strength. They did not think that Chu Li would dare to kill them. They were not the only ones. No one thought that Chu Li would kill them. His swordsmanship was so good. You. Qin Zhao pointed at him. What swordsmanship is that? Chu Li said calmly, cloud-slashing divine sword. Great swordsmanship. Qin Zhao forced a smile. Zhuge Tian, you're definitely going to die. Zhu Zio held his chest and growled. Chu Li pushed the sword forward. A cold light flashed and the tip of the sword appeared at Zhu Zio's throat. Zhu Zio held his throat and stared at him. He wanted to eat him alive. Chu Li said calmly, I am the young master of Crouching Bull Mountain. You two have no right to tell me what to do or threaten me. Go back to where you belong. He pulled out his sword. Tsk. Blood shot at him like an arrow. He moved sideways and dodged it. He looked at the two celestial men as their bodies lit up. They turned into two balls of light and shot into the sky. A huge and vast heavenly gate appeared indistinctly on the horizon. The gate of heaven slowly opened. Zhu Zio and Qin Zhao arrived in front of the gate of heaven. They turned their heads to look back, still filled with resentment and unwillingness. Then they entered the gate of heaven. The gate of heaven slowly closed and gradually disappeared into the clouds. Everyone let out a long sigh of relief before glaring at Chu Li. Things had developed so quickly that they could not react in time. Now, they suddenly realized that the two seniors of the Crouching Bull Mountain had been killed by the young lord and had been sent back to the outland. Young master. Huang Tao shook his head helplessly. You're in big trouble. Duan Tianya nodded and looked at Chu Li with a complicated expression. He felt that if he were in Crouching Bull Mountain's shoes, he would not have the guts to kill the two seniors of the Crouching Bull Mountain. After they arrived, they guided everyone in their cultivation and everyone benefited greatly. They were like their teachers. Yet, the young master dared to risk universal condemnation and kill him. He really needed extraordinary courage. Everyone glared at Chu Li in dissatisfaction. Chu Li said faintly, They want to replace me as the young lord, saying that I'm not fit to be the young lord of Crouching Bull Mountain. Everyone nodded and then shook their heads. Although the young lord's morals were lacking, he had turned over a new leaf, and had turned over a new leaf. He had also contributed greatly to the strength of the Crouching Bull Mountain. Without the young lord's forceful promotion, everyone would not have the chance to cultivate the Crouching Bull insight, and there would not be such a powerful Crouching Bull Mountain. Chu Li said, "They did contribute to the Crouching Bull Mountain, but they did not have good intentions. Everyone will naturally understand in the future." "Young master, why did the two seniors not have good intentions?" someone asked. Chu Li said faintly, "Why did the Celestials descend?" Everyone shook their heads. Chu Li said calmly, "I came back from the outside world and know the true nature of the Celestials. The Outland is fighting with the Azura boundary and needs a lot of manpower, so the Celestials descended to recruit more people to the Outland to help." Everyone was excited. This was a secret that involved the Outland. Chu Li said, "The Outland has relaxed the restrictions on ascension. As long as one reaches the Grandmaster's boundary, they can enter the Outland after death. Therefore, the Celestials want to increase the number of Grandmasters as much as possible and then let them die and ascend." "It's a rare opportunity to enter the Outland," someone said. "In the past, Grandmasters might not even have the chance to enter the Outland. It was a legendary existence, a place that everyone dreamed of." Chu Li chuckled. "Do you think meat pies will fall from the sky? Why did the Outland relax the requirements for entry? That's because we need the people of our realm to be the vanguard and the meat shields. Everyone, you must understand that if you die in battle in the sky beyond heavens, your body and soul may be destroyed. You may be free and unfettered in our realm, but once you reach the sky beyond heavens, you will be at the bottom of society. Anyone can kill you." "There's still a chance, right?" someone asked. Chu Li scoffed. "Naive." Everyone looked like they were in deep thought. Chu Li said faintly, "Did they mention if the Crouching Bull Mountain still has a faction in the Outland?" "Yes," everyone said. Chu Li said, "Then the Grandmasters are the lowest disciples. They have to start from scratch. They can't even cultivate the Outland's antique study before they're sent to the battlefield. They're the first batch of people to be sacrificed." Everyone frowned. Duan Tianya said, "They can't be that short-sighted, right? They don't lack Grandmasters like us. If they lose a batch, they'll go down to the mortal realm to recruit more. Those Celestials who are successful in cultivation are more precious. Anyway, it's not a good thing to go up there. Just remember this. Otherwise, I would have gone up there long ago. With my luck, why would I worry about not being able to make it out?" Chu Li said faintly. Everyone nodded slowly. The young lord was extremely lucky. Otherwise, he would not have a fortuitous encounter to cultivate such a sword technique. He also had a high level of comprehension to be able to cultivate it to such a level. In that case, it was indeed suitable for him to go to the Outland. In the end, he did not go up there. Perhaps it was as he said. If the young lord did not dare to go up there, it was even more impossible for them. Chu Li glanced at everyone and waved his hand. "Go and cultivate." Before the crowd dispersed, there were hurried footsteps coming from outside. Xia Lian and Murong Chun strode into the courtyard and saw that everyone was there. They glanced around but did not see Zhu Zio and Qin Zhao. They frowned. Chu Li waved his hand. "Everyone, get out!" With one look, everyone knew that the situation was not good. They walked out one after another while greeting the two elders. Murong Chun and Xia Lian Fist saluted as they returned the greeting. They kept staring at Chu Li. Chu Li waited until everyone left before he said, "Elders, did you hear the news? Did you really kill the two elders?" Murong Chun quickly asked. Chu Li nodded. They wanted to kill Qiao San again. Qiao San escaped again, or else he would have died twice. But Murong Chun opened his mouth but could not say anything. Chu Li said calmly, They wanted to replace me, so I can only replace them. Sigh. Xia Lian shook his head. Murong Chun said, we're indebted to them. So what? Chu Li said faintly. How can we keep them alive if they want to repay their kindness and have ulterior motives? They're too greedy. Sigh. Murong Chun sighed helplessly. They had already been killed. It was too late to say anything now. They could only wait for the Hill Master to return. Chapter 1883. If things were that simple, Chu Li could just kill everyone who opposed him and take control of Crouching Bull Mountain. He would not have to go through so much trouble and effort. People's hearts were complicated and could not be solved by force. He needed loyal subordinates, not dissidents. Force could only be used for deterrence and prestige. Could not be a method. The most important thing was still benefit. It could let people see a bright and glorious future. Compared to the heavenly demonic sect, the Crouching Bull Mountain had greater potential. He needed the power of the Crouching Bull Mountain. It was an orthodox sect that was open and aboveboard. There was no need for them to act sneakily. They could calmly face all challenges and strengthen themselves. They could accept challenges from all directions and become a top sect. Chu Li Fist saluted. Elders, I will spend 2 hours every day to talk about martial arts. All disciples are welcome to listen. Young Master is going to talk about martial arts too? The two were instantly interested. They knew that the young master was a genius. He learned all of his skills by himself. Qiao San was the only master who initiated him. The Hill Master's dislike of him caused him to be ignored. To be able to cultivate all of his skills on his own, he was definitely a genius. His comprehension must be amazing. It was even more amazing than the two elders. If he could talk about martial arts, it would be more beneficial to everyone. This made them excited. Chu Li said faintly, let everyone see who's more powerful, the two seniors or me. All right. The two were overjoyed. They fist saluted and left. When they reached the door, Xia Lian said, Young Master, let's start today. How about lunch? That's great. Chu Li nodded. The two left immediately. They were afraid that Chu Li would change his mind. Qiao San stood aside and asked, Young Master, are you really going to talk about martial arts? Of course. Chu Li nodded. Qiao San smiled. This is a good tactic. It can win people's hearts. It's very important for you to inherit the Hill Master's position. Chu Li scoffed. Those two old men are dead. Let's see who can still oppose me. It was supposed to be a smooth process for him to inherit the Hill Master's position. However, these two Celestials just had to get involved. He naturally wanted to kill them and would not allow them to mess up his plan. Young Master, you killed them well. Qiao San smiled. Chu Li glanced at him. You're not satisfied without taking revenge yourself, right? No. Qiao San waved his hand and said, I know my own limits. I'm no match for them. After all, they are Celestials. Chu Li nodded in satisfaction. Your ability to escape is not bad. You have to be more careful in the future. I will have a lot of enemies. Don't worry, young master. I don't dare to boast about other abilities, but I'm definitely capable of escaping. Qiao San patted his chest. Chu Li smiled and nodded. After lunch, everyone gathered at the martial arts arena. There was a high platform in the middle of the training field. At this moment, the platform was empty, but there were already 1,000 people sitting cross-legged below the platform, surrounding it. Crouching Bull Mountain was indeed showing signs of resurgence. The entire mountain was filled with vitality, as if the sun was rising from the east. Everyone sat below the stage and whispered to each other. The young master wants to talk about martial arts. Is it all right? The young master isn't much older than us. Young master is about the same age as us. What about his cultivation? Young master killed 2 seniors with a single strike. With such cultivation and sword techniques, if we could learn even 2 or 3 of them, we would be able to dominate the world. All in all, this is a good opportunity. I'm just afraid that the young master didn't cultivate the crouching bull insight, but sword techniques. Don't worry, the young master is a genius. Zhu Zio and Qin Zhao had already won their hearts and were deeply grateful. However, now that the two were dead, they immediately turned to Chu Li. After all, the two's foundation was still shallow. They were also forgetful and remembered grudges. Xia Lian, Murong Chun, and a few other higher-ups were sitting behind them. They listened to the whispers and discussed in low voices. "Senior brother Xia, will the young master be all right?" Murong Chun asked. Xia Lian scoffed. "Although the young master is young, his martial arts are strong. Don't underestimate the young master." Sigh. Murong Chun shook his head. The young master has poked a little too much this time. He was not worried about this side. The entire Crouching Bull Mountain was under the control of the Hill Master. Although the young master had caused trouble, as long as the others did not strongly oppose it, he could suppress it. However, there was one side that could not be suppressed, and that was the surpassing state. The elders of the surpassing state were not so easy to deal with. Because of a disagreement, the young master had killed two seniors who had contributed greatly to Crouching Bull Mountain. Especially the two seniors, who were the most important, they were also seniors. If the young master treated the two seniors this way, and they were seniors who had contributed greatly to the mountain, what about the elders? Would he do the same to them? Would he kill them because of a disagreement? Once such an overbearing young master took control of Crouching Bull Mountain and became the Hill Master, who would learn to speak loudly. Would they have to swallow their anger and be extremely docile? The elders were used to being free and unfettered. The Hill Master almost did not care about them, and they could not stand such an overbearing Hill Master. Therefore, Murong Chun could predict that the big trouble was yet to come. The elders of the surpassing state would not let it go, and they would definitely do everything they could to stop the young master from taking over the position. However, if the young master did not kill the two seniors directly, the trouble would be even bigger. The two seniors had shocking rallying power. Once they incited all the disciples to oppose him as the Hill Master, the situation would be set, and the Hill Master would not be able to suppress it. If he were the young master, he would only have one way out. He had no other choice. Suddenly, a green shadow floated down from the sky. It floated like a cloud and landed lightly on the high platform. It was Zhuge Tian, who was disguised as Chu Li. Chu Li glanced at the crowd, his gaze like lightning. Everyone felt their bodies tense up, and their hair unconsciously stood on end. The pressure of a mountain hit them in the face. Chu Li said, "Everyone, I am honored to talk about the Crouching Bull insight today." Everyone nodded hurriedly. Chu Li said, "Everyone may have heard of the Crouching Bull insight, but everyone has a different understanding. Today, I will talk about my own understanding. It would be best if everyone can understand something." He paced with his hands behind his back, his gaze calm. The Crouching Bull insight. Most people only know that the bull is a green bull, a powerful spirit beast, so they know that the Crouching Bull insight is powerful. Everyone nodded. Chu Li shook his head and said, "But everyone, there is another explanation for this bull. It is stubbornness, the nature of the heart." Everyone was stunned, and they quickly pricked up their ears. Chu Li said, "The Crouching Bull insight is the most taboo for using too much strength. It is the lightest heart technique. But I see that most of you have cultivated the bull's strength, and you see the Crouching Bull insight as competing with the green bull." Everyone was shocked, and they could not help but start discussing in low voices. Chu Li continued, "If this path doesn't work, then change to another path. If another path doesn't work, then change to another path. Don't be stubborn in one direction, or else you will be using too much strength. Everyone, do you know how strong the green bull is? No matter how strong a person is, it is impossible to go against it, so you can only use clever strength. But everyone, you see the crouching bull insight as a Herculean technique, and you train your strength with all your might. You think that cultivating the crouching bull insight will make you stronger than the young people. What a joke. Chapter 1884. Chu Li smiled. That's why you're all cultivating wrongly. His expression remained the same as he said, if you don't believe me, you can practice according to my method and the old way. Now I'll explain the first picture of the crouching bull insight. As he spoke, he struck a pose. Suddenly, his aura changed drastically as if he had turned into a green bull. Moreover, it was a gigantic green bull with a monstrous aura as if it could stomp him into minced meat with a single stomp. Chu Li said, the first picture isn't about a crouching bull, it's about becoming a bull. How can you become a green bull? Only by understanding the green bull and being similar to it can you truly tame it. It's this picture that often leads people astray and makes them think that they'll become green bulls in the future. As he spoke, he made a punching gesture. Instantly, it was as if a green bull was raising its horns to pierce through the sky. It was a shocking sight. Does anyone want to try the power of the first picture of the crouching bull insight? Chu Li asked. Duan Tianya floated up and landed on the stage. He fist saluted. Young master, let me try. Chu Li nodded and punched with both hands like a bull. Duan Tianya met it with his fist, using the crouching bull punch. Bang! A muffled sound was heard as Duan Tianya and Chu Li's fists collided and he staggered backward. Chu Li retracted his fist and smiled at Duan Tianya. I didn't use my inner energy this time. It's purely physical strength. Duan Tianya nodded. Indeed, he did not feel any fist force. There was only a strong force, but it was enough to force him to retreat. Chu Li said, this punch is a basic fist technique. You can activate it according to your heart technique. As for its power, it depends on your cultivation level. However, the power of this punch lies in its amplification of pure physical strength. When you don't have any inner energy, you can still use this punch to win. With inner energy, it'll be even more powerful. Duan Tianya frowned. But why isn't our punch as powerful? They all saw the first picture as a beginner's guide, used to train their bodies. They never thought about its power. It was like the starting gesture, just a decoration or a guide for later cultivation. Chu Li said, that's because everyone didn't practice it correctly. I'll go through the intricacies of this punch in detail. Every movement must be precise. The slightest mistake can lead to a huge error. There can't be any mistake. As he spoke, he began to stand. Everyone's steps were different. Because of their different heights, the steps required were also different. Some only needed to take small steps, while others needed to take big steps. Everyone got up and started practicing on the training field. Chu Li glided off the stage and corrected everyone's posture. With the omniscient mirror, he could clearly see everyone's meridians, aura flow, and vital essence flow. That was why he could adjust everyone's posture to the best state and achieve the most precise state. Murong Chun, Xia Lian, and a few other higher-ups also went along with the flow. They posed with the others so that Chu Li could correct them. They were the most curious, and their suspicions of Chu Li deepened. They felt that the two elders could not possibly be wrong. However, as soon as Chu Li adjusted their postures and did not do anything else, they instantly felt their bodies relax. Their bodies were connected, and an invisible force surged from the soles of their feet. It was as if their feet had become one with the ground. Boundless energy surged from the ground, and they could not wait to release it. This made it impossible for them to doubt it. They had never felt this way before. Chu Li's movements were extremely fast. With just one palm, he corrected everyone's posture. He did not need to adjust it bit by bit. Even so, it took some time for him to hit 1,000 palms. The others were not impatient. They were all in a wonderful state. They felt like they had become one with the ground. They were the ground, and the ground was them. The ground surged with boundless energy. They were full of energy. They were better than they had been before. After correcting everyone's posture, Chuli glided back to the stage and said, "I don't think there's a need to continue today. Everyone, just stand for a while. When you really remember this feeling, it'll be better if you can stand by yourself next time." Duan Tianya said, "Young lord, we have nowhere to release our energy. We'll suffocate." Chuli said, "You can't release it. Once you do, it'll be useless. This form is used to nourish and strengthen the body. The longer you stand, the better. It can increase everyone's strength. This is the real way to cultivate the green bull." "Young lord, what about the second illustration?" Murong Chun asked. Chuli glanced at him and chuckled. "It seems like Elder Murong can't wait for the second illustration. Originally, everyone should have cultivated the first illustration for around a year to strengthen their bodies. However, since Elder Murong and everyone else is anxious, I'll talk about the second illustration." The aura around him changed. It suddenly became illusory and unpredictable. "Then," he said, "the second illustration starts with the crouching bull technique. It's the first technique of crouching bull. It requires the circulation of an extremely hard force, and then it becomes extremely soft. You can freely switch between hard and soft. When you can freely switch between the two, you'll be considered to have cultivated the second illustration." Everyone listened to him thoughtfully. Chuli fiercely threw a punch. A huge green bull appeared in front of everyone. It was so lifelike that it looked no different from the real thing. The green bull's momentum was unstoppable. It was as if it wanted to crush everyone in its way. His punch was aimed at Murong Chun and the others. Murong Chun and the others threw their fists at it. They were also using the crouching bull fist. "Moo!" Chuli's green bull seemed to let out a low growl. It knocked away everyone's fist force and crashed into them. More than 20 people flew into the air. An opening was formed in the encirclement. The green bull disappeared into the air. Chuli retracted his fist and nodded in satisfaction. "Everyone, do you feel anything?" Murong Chun, Xiaolian, and a few other elders and disciples who flew into the air were deep in thought. They felt the fist force and noticed something strange. It was as if it was extremely hard, but it suddenly became unpredictable. It was soft and weak, but it suddenly became hard and fierce. It was impossible to defend against it. It was so uncomfortable that they wanted to vomit blood. Chuli said, "It's useless to blindly be hard and soft. Only by combining hard and soft and changing at will, it's truly magical." I don't have to explain the last few illustrations of the crouching bull insight. Everyone should follow this logic and comprehend it. I'm sure you'll be able to master it quickly. Everyone looked at Murong Chun and Xiaolian, who remained silent. It was obvious that they agreed with Chuli's words. Chuli smiled. "Elder Xia, Elder Murong, you can go back and try. If it doesn't work, you can stop cultivating." "All right," Murong Chun said slowly. The young lord's words completely overturned his understanding of the crouching bull insight. He had to start from scratch. It was not an easy task. He needed to fight against his original belief. The older one was, the harder it was to change. Duan Tianya and the others were more accepting. Chuli glanced at everyone and said, "Everyone can give it a try. I'll start teaching 3 days later." Chapter 1885. Many of them were still immersed in standing, feeling their bodies being nourished by a powerful force and becoming stronger. Some of them even stood for an entire afternoon or night, only stopping when they could not stand it anymore. After standing for such a long time, not only did they not feel tired, but they were also 100 times more energetic than before. This strange feeling convinced them, and they also believed in Chuli's theory. Therefore, most of them tried to comprehend the crouching bull insight according to Chuli's theory. In the evening, Chu Li returned to the High Duke's public house and picked up Shao Qi and Shao Shi from the 100,000 Hills ice pool. They chatted and drank on Jade Guardian Island, talking about the situation outside. After the Zheng dynasty retreated, King Ping did not force them and retreated as well. The turbulent situation was forcefully quelled, which disappointed many people, including the celestial beings, so they hated Chu Li even more. However, they did not take any action as they were shocked by Chu Li's ruthlessness and determination, so they did not know how to deal with it. Fortunately, Chu Li disappeared without a trace after quelling the dispute between the two countries, as if he had completely disappeared from the people's sight. This made people feel that he had retreated after achieving his goal. Shao Shi was dressed in a snow-white robe. She took a sip of fruit wine and smiled. Chu Li, your ability to advance and retreat at will is very impressive. You should become an official. Chu Li smiled. I don't really want to hide, there's something more important. What is it? Shao Shi asked. Shao Qi frowned. Actually, you should hide for a while. When one reaches the peak, one will fall. No one can escape. Chu Li smiled. Madam, don't worry. I haven't slacked off, I've been cultivating hard. Your energy is limited after all, Shao Qi said. She was worried about Chu Li's future, not his illustrious glory. Chu Li nodded. After this is done, I can go into isolated cultivation. What is it? Shao Shi was curious. Chu Li told them about how he cultivated the blood dragon tree and combined it with the soaring grass to create a master. The two ladies could not help but be excited after listening to him. If what Chu Li said was true, the High Duke's public house's strength would increase explosively. They could even compete with the four major sects and suppress the Lung family, so they would not have to care about the Lung family anymore. Shao Shi said, if that's the case, Crouching Bull Mountain is very important? Actually, you can also look for Snow Lunar Pavilion. Chu Li shook his head and sighed. Snow Lunar Pavilion is not suitable. It's hard to go against their feelings, I can't bring myself to do it. That's true. Shao Shi nodded. Is everything going well at Crouching Bull Mountain? There's a small problem, Chu Li said. The blood dragon fruit was about to ripen. He had already harvested the soaring grass and was refining the soaring elixir. He couldn't wait to cultivate the earth matrix and reincarnation scripture. He also couldn't wait to get his hands on the heavenly star jade stamp. Both were of utmost importance. He had a premonition that the Asuras would soon descend in large numbers, and that would truly be the time of chaos. His time was tight, and he needed to complete it as soon as possible. Shao Shi said, why don't we ask Lu Yurong to come over and give us some ideas? Shao Qi glared at her. Xiao Shi pursed her lips and smiled. Lu Yurong has the most cunning ideas. The two of you working together to scheme against others is invincible. Chu Li said, she's also having a hard time over there. Forget it. He already knew that the Nine Heavens Mystic Fairy sect had also sent two celestial beings to Lu Yurong's side. They insisted on teaching her the continuation mantra of the Nine Heavens Mystic Fairy power and wanted to take her as a disciple. Lu Yurong was annoyed but helpless. Looks like you're still in contact with Lu Yurong. Xiao Shi's smile widened, and she glared at Shao Qi. Shao Qi looked at Chu Li. Chu Li smiled. I met her by chance. Do you want to consume the blood dragon fruit, madam? Is it still useful for me to consume it now? Shao Qi asked. Chu Li nodded. It's still useful. Even if it can't increase one's power, it can still strengthen one's body. Shao Qi asked, what about second eldest sister? Chu Li smiled. It should be useful. Xiao Shi scoffed. My cultivation level isn't weak anymore. Chu Li quickly nodded. Shao Qi said, second eldest sister, you started cultivating late. No matter how talented you are, there's still a process. Isn't it the same for Chu Li? I dare not compare myself to Hero Shao. Shao Shi scoffed. Shao Qi chuckled. Chu Li coughed. I'll go back to Crouching Bull Mountain to take a look. Go, go. Don't worry here. No one will dare to harm us, Xiaoshu said. Chu Li nodded. His relationship with the Grandmaster seemed to have eased up a little. Under such circumstances, the Grandmaster would not take the initiative to attack them. They could stay in the High Duke's public house without worry, and there was no need to return to the 100,000 Hills. On the afternoon of the third day, after lunch, Chu Li appeared at the martial arts field again. He stood on the high platform and looked down at the crowd. He asked calmly, "Do you have any new insights?" Duan Tianya sighed. "I've learned a lot." According to what the young lord said, after comprehending the Crouching Bull insight again, my cultivation has improved greatly. Everyone nodded. Murong Chun said, "How did the young lord know this? I don't think the Crouching Bull insight mentioned anything about it." Chu Li said, "I've read many notes from ancient times, and I've seen the records of Crouching Bull Mountain. It said that the founder of Crouching Bull Mountain's fist was as fast as lightning, and his fist was as light as the clouds. It was earth-shattering, and no one could stop it. He founded the Crouching Bull Mountain." Everyone had a confused look on their faces. Chu Li shook his head and sighed. "If you want to improve your comprehension, the key is to read books. Start with some miscellaneous books to increase your knowledge. Otherwise, if you just blindly cultivate, you'll inevitably fall behind. Even if you can improve by cultivating diligently, your progress will be slow." Did the young lord think of it based on these records? Murong Chun asked. Chu Li said, "These records reminded me that the Crouching Bull insight might not be as I imagined it to be. It's not always strong and overbearing, and one's strength can defeat 10 people. But if you think about it from a different perspective, you'll suddenly see the light, and everything can be understood." He continued, "What I've said just now is the truest insight. If you want to have comprehension and cultivate your martial arts to the peak, it'll be difficult if you don't read enough books, unless you're born with talent." Only then did everyone take him seriously, and they nodded slowly. Chu Li continued, "As long as you master this, the rest is just branches and leaves. Think about it slowly, and you'll eventually find a solution. If you have any doubts, you can ask me in the future." He glided away after he finished speaking. Everyone was a little disappointed, and they wanted to ask a few more questions. They had many questions in the process of comprehension, and they wanted Chu Li to answer them. When they wanted to look for Chu Li the next day, they were told that the young lord had already left the mountain with Elder Xia and went to the surpassing state. Everyone felt melancholy and they felt anxious. However, Qiao San calmly told everyone that the young lord purposely did this, so that everyone could comprehend it on their own. There was only one part of the Crouching Bull insight, but everyone had different insights, and the martial arts that they comprehended would be the most suitable for them. Everyone immediately felt a deep sense of respect, and they went back to isolated cultivation in high spirit. The entire Crouching Bull Mountain was full of vitality again. The disciples went in, and their strength increased again. In the evening, the sun set in the west, and the towering mountain peak in front of Chu Li was red. This mountain peak seemed to reach the sky, and the surrounding mountains gave Chu Li the illusion that he had entered 100,000 Hills. Although these mountains were not as rich in spiritual energy as 100,000 Hills, and were not as heavy as 100,000 Hills, it was enough to make people feel small. "The surpassing state is here?" Chu Li pointed at the towering mountain peak. Xia Lian nodded. "It's on the mountain." With the omniscient mirror, he saw that the towering mountain peak was covered in lush trees, and no signs of human habitation could be seen. However, there was a small valley halfway up the mountain, and there was a formation set up in the valley. It could be hidden from the eyes of others, but it could not be hidden from the omniscient mirror. Chu Li nodded emotionally. "I didn't expect it to be so far away from Crouching Bull Mountain." He estimated that Crouching Bull Mountain was thousands of miles away from here. Chapter 1886. This is the surpassing state. Young master, let's go up. Xiaolian turned around and said. Chu Li nodded slowly. Xiaolian hesitated for a moment. Young master, now that you've entered the surpassing state, it's better to speak less. Chu Li raised his eyebrows and scoffed. Elder Xia, what are you trying to say? I'm afraid the surpassing state has already received the news from inside the mountain, Xiaolian said. Chu Li replied, yes. Xiaolian said, I'm afraid that the young master has angered the elders by killing the 2 seniors. Now there are 6 great elders guarding the surpassing realm, not 2. Chu Li said faintly, the elders in Victory Boundary have their own duties. Do they still have the leisure to care about the matters in the mountain? He already knew that there were 4 more elders in the surpassing state. One of the 6 great elders was an array formation elder. He specialized in guarding the operation of the surpassing realm array formation to prevent any problems from happening to the array formation. He was also very familiar with the array formation Tao. This was the most important elder because the art of formations was mysterious and unpredictable. It required an extremely high talent and a genius to learn it. Crouching Bull Mountain could not compare to the 4 major sects, so it was not as attractive to genius disciples. Hence, it was very difficult to find such a genius. Therefore, every formation prodigy was extremely precious, even more so than a grandmaster. The other 2 elders were the cultivation imparting elders. They were responsible for the martial arts guidance of the disciples in the surpassing realm. The last 3 elders were the guardian elders. They were responsible for the defense of the surpassing realm and cooperated with the formation elders. Once there was an invasion from the outside, the guardian elders had to step forward. The surpassing realm was hidden. The disciples were often blindfolded and brought into the surpassing realm. They did not know where it was. When they left the surpassing realm, they were also sent out by the elders. There were less than 10 people in the entire Crouching Bull Mountain who knew where the surpassing state was. Therefore, even though their responsibilities were heavy, the 6 grand elders were still very free. It was inevitable that they would worry about the matters of Crouching Bull Mountain. Xiaolian said, the elders are also concerned about Crouching Bull Mountain, so it's inevitable for them to be more involved. Then, do they have the authority to appoint and dismiss the Hill Master? Chu Li asked calmly. Xiaolian shook his head. Chu Li scoffed. They don't have the right to appoint or dismiss the Hill Master, but they can interfere with who becomes the Hill Master? Yes. Xiaolian nodded and said, that's because those who enter the Grandmaster's boundary have to receive guidance and protection from the elders in the surpassing state, so it has a great impact on the disciples. All the Grandmasters in the entire mountain have to give them some face. Chu Li said coldly, you're using public facilities for your own personal use. You're really taking advantage of your seniority. Young lord. Xiaolian hurriedly said, they are not like the 2 seniors, you can't kill them. Chu Li said, don't worry, Elder Xia. I won't kill them. Harmony is the most important thing. We're all one family, so we can sit down and talk things out. The 6 elders don't understand the young master, so everyone has misunderstood. Xiaolian secretly let out a sigh of relief. These 6 elders all wanted to replace the young lord. Chu Li calmly said, then let's sit down and talk. Elder Xia, it's time to go up, right? All right, let's go. Xiaolian said solemnly. The 2 of them glided up and stepped on the treetops like 2 shadows. After a while, they were halfway up the mountain and in front of a ravine. Xiaolian's body moved like lightning, and in the blink of an eye, he hit 16 pine trees with his palm. These 16 pine trees were old and strong. They were tall enough to reach the sky. They were all old trees that were more than 100 years old. After being hit by his palm, they only shook a little and nothing else happened. Chu Li squinted his eyes slightly and was greatly impressed by this formation. This formation was already integrated with nature and was one with heaven and earth, so it was difficult to notice the existence of the formation. The fluctuation of spiritual energy and the surrounding spiritual energy were one. Unless one was as sensitive as him and had a divine power like the omniscient mirror, it would be difficult to find the surpassing state. This was definitely not the work of an ordinary master. Crouching Bull Mountain did have a master in the past. Xia Lian glided to his side and said, "Young lord, let's go in." Chu Li nodded. Xia Lian led the way in front and said, "If it wasn't for the previous secret signal, we wouldn't be able to enter. Even if we did, we would fall into the formation and our lives would be in danger." Chu Li said, "Has anyone broken through the surpassing state?" "Not yet." Xia Lian shook his head and said, "We've done it very carefully and we've been inconspicuous all these years, so they didn't have any ideas about our surpassing state." Chu Li said faintly, "The more it is like this, the more careful we have to be. It's inevitable that we'll be careless. The Celestials won't let go of the surpassing state." "Yes," Xia Lian said in a low voice. He was on guard. As an elder of Crouching Bull Mountain, he had enough channels to collect news from the outside world. He already knew about the actions of these Celestials, so he was not so angry about the death of the two seniors. After all, as a Celestial, he had to be on guard. The two of them walked toward a stone wall and forcefully walked forward. When they collided with the stone wall, they suddenly saw a bright and beautiful valley. It was as warm as spring, and the fragrance of flowers and the chirping of birds filled the air. It was simply a land of paradise. 6 figures descended from the sky. Among them was Hu Huarong, who had brought his disciples to challenge him. His round figure was still smiling, but it contained a sense of majesty as he stared at him solemnly. Chu Li frowned. Hu Huarong's martial arts had been crippled by him back then. How did he recover and even recover his cultivation level? It seemed that he really had a fortuitous encounter. Xia Lian Fist saluted. "Greetings, Masters Junior. Why did you bring the young lord here?" Hu Huarong frowned and stroked his silver beard. "Logically, the young lord is not qualified to enter the surpassing state." Chu Li smiled without saying a word. Xia Lian said, "If the young lord wants to see the Hill Master, he naturally has to come here." The Hill Master is in isolated cultivation. He won't see anyone." Hu Huarong said in a low voice, "Let's go back and wait. When the Hill Master comes out, he will naturally leave the surpassing state. The Hill Master needs to report about the young lord killing the two Celestials. The elders in the mountain can't make a decision. When can the Hill Master come out?" Xia Lian said in a low voice. "The Hill Master is comprehending the divine technique. Once he succeeds, it will be a blessing for Crouching Bull Mountain. How can we disturb him?" Another slender elder said slowly, "As for the killing of the two sect seniors, we really need to investigate. They are our sect seniors. If the juniors treat us like this, how should we deal with them?" Xia Lian quickly said, "It's not the same, Elder Bai. The young lord is not targeting the sect seniors, but the Celestials. Everyone knows that the Celestials do not have good intentions. Regardless of whether the two sect seniors have good intentions or not, it's obvious that they have done us a great favor. Biting the hand that feeds us is not the style of the sect, and we can't let this trend grow." Elder Bai frowned. Hu Huarong said slowly, "Even if you are dissatisfied, you can let the mountain chieftain make the decision, or even the elders. How can you kill someone so rashly? This is simply treason and heresy. How can you continue to be the mountain chieftain with such behavior?" Elder Bai sighed. "If the Hill Master does this, we don't know what kind of dangerous situation he will bring Crouching Bull Mountain into. It's better to be cautious." "That's right, the Hill Master must be cautious in his choice." The other 4 elders nodded. Chu Li squinted his eyes and smiled without saying a word. Xia Lian, on the other hand, was slightly anxious. He said in a low voice, the Hill Master's matters should be decided by the Hill Master. As elders, we can't overstep our boundaries. We can't make an exception. Who said we overstepped our boundaries? We're just saying, we'll let the Hill Master decide what to do. Hu Huarong smiled. He turned his head to another elder with a yellow face and asked, Senior Brother Jean, am I right? Chapter 1887. The yellow-faced elder nodded slowly. As elders, we only have the right to make suggestions. We do not have the right to make decisions. Whoever becomes the next Hill Master will be decided by the Hill Master alone. There is no need to say more. Yes, the other 5 elders said in a deep voice. Chu Li closed fist saluted and smiled. Greetings, Elder Jean. Although he had never seen him before, he knew that this was Jean Yi. Originally, there were only 2 people guarding the surpassing state, Jean Yi and Hu Huarong. After Crouching Bull Mountain's strength grew, they sent another 4 elders over to help. Chu Li guessed that this was also a method of dividing power. It was a choice that Zhuge Feng had no choice but to make. Otherwise, under Jean Yi and Hu Huarong's control, the surpassing state would be like a mountain outside of the mountain, out of Crouching Bull Mountain's control. At the moment, it seemed like Zhuge Feng's plan had failed. The 4 elders that were sent over had all submitted to Jean Yi. After all, Jean Yi's prestige was extremely high, and he was the eldest senior brother. These elders had nothing to say about submitting to Jean Yi. Chu Li scanned the omniscient mirror and saw through their thoughts. He sighed to himself. Zhuge Feng still could not win against Jean Yi. He suddenly looked up at the sky. Above the clouds, the divine gate faintly appeared and slowly opened. Then, a beam of light rose from the valley and rushed to the sky. In the blink of an eye, it appeared in front of the divine gate. Chu Li's expression changed. It was Zhuge Feng. Jean Yi and the others had good eyesight. They were shocked to see Zhuge Feng. Xia Lian shouted, Hill Master! Zhuge Feng seemed to be looking down at everyone. His gaze finally landed on Chu Li. He shook his head and turned to enter the divine gate. The divine gate slowly closed and disappeared into the clouds. Xia Lian's expression was extremely ugly. He brought Chu Li here to see the Hill Master. He wanted the Hill Master to solidify Chu Li's position and become the next Hill Master. He had already announced that Zhuge Tian would be the next Hill Master in Crouching Bull Mountain. However, he did not announce it to the people of the surpassing state. As long as the Hill Master said it, Jean Yi and the others could only obey no matter how powerful they were. This was the authority of the Hill Master. However, they did not expect that before they could see the Hill Master would ascend to the sky. It was obvious that something went wrong with his cultivation. Chu Li scoffed. No wonder everyone is blocking here. Looks like you all know the Hill Master ascended. Hu Huarong was shocked. Zhuge Tian, don't talk nonsense. The Hill Master is an isolated cultivation in a secret place. We don't even know where he is. How would we know that the Hill Master has ascended to heaven? Don Tutu to us. Jean Yi shook his head. You're so young, but your heart is so vicious. He did not expect Zhuge Tian to react so quickly and take the initiative to attack first. This was not something an ordinary person could do. It required sufficient intelligence. Zhuge Tian was so powerful. If he really became the Hill Master, they would not have a good life. Hence, they had to stop him. Xia Lian revealed a hesitant expression and looked suspiciously at the 6 Grand Elders. Hu Huarong shouted in a deep voice, Little Xia, why are you looking at me like that? Tian, who to say? Tian, to you. To know. To do to you. To not to. To. As long as you know. Hu Huarong replied snappily, no matter how dissatisfied we are with Mountain Chieftain, we won't go so far as to not be able to meet our ancestors. In the future, we still have to ascend to the realm beyond heaven. Xiao Lian nodded lightly. He believed in this point. If he really committed the act of murdering the mountain chieftain, there would definitely be no place for him in the future. Even if he could live freely here for a while, once he reached the realm beyond heavens, he would definitely be severely punished. His life would be worse than death. Hu Huarong glared at Chu Li. Zhuge Tian, you're gauging the heart of a gentleman with your own mean measure. Chu Li shook his head. I don't believe it either, but this is too much of a coincidence. Don't you think so, elders? Why was my path blocked the moment I reached the surpassing state? Why was I not allowed to see the mountain chieftain? Of all times, mountain chieftain ascended to heaven. Hu Huarong scoffed, we don't want you to see the mountain chieftain, but we have no intention of harming her. They did not want to harm the hill master, but rather, they wanted to teach Zhuge Tian a lesson and cause him to lose all of his dignity. This would cause him to fall in the hearts of the younger disciples and reduce their support, allowing Lu Tianji to regain his position. Lu Tianji was like a fish in water in the surpassing state. He made friends with the younger disciples and had a good relationship with them. As long as Zhuge Tian's prestige was reduced, Lu Tianji's chances would increase greatly. As for the elders of their generation, they did not need to say much. As long as they mentioned it, they would definitely support Lu Tianji. In this way, everyone would submit to Lu Tianji, and Zhuge Feng was a person who prioritized public interests over private interests. As long as everyone wholeheartedly submitted to Lu Tianji, he would not take the risk of everyone in Crouching Bull Mountain being disunited and forcefully push Zhuge Tian to the position. Chu Li said, it's hard to predict a person's heart. Who knows? For the position of mountain chieftain, everyone personally went into battle. How could you not do something even more excessive? He did not wait for everyone to speak and said in a deep voice, back then, the mountain chieftain personally announced that I would be the next mountain chieftain. Everyone must have heard of this, right? As long as you haven't become the mountain chieftain, there can be variables. Hu Huarong scoffed. Chu Li shook his head. Now that the mountain chieftain has ascended to heaven, is there still a dispute over the position of mountain chieftain? Hu Huarong's face darkened. Let's wait for everyone to gather before discussing the position of mountain chieftain. Jin Yi said in a deep voice, the few of us should also move and return to the mountain to take a look. Chu Li said, the elders guard the surpassing state. It's a great responsibility. How can you leave so easily? If they returned, they would definitely stir up trouble and make Crouching Bull Mountain restless. Junior brother Jing and the others are enough to guard here. Back then, it was only me and junior brother Hu, Jin Yi said calmly. He turned around and closed fist saluted. Junior brother Jing, junior brother Qi, junior brother Huang, junior brother Mo, I'll leave this place to you. Senior brother Jin, don't worry. The four elders closed fist saluted back. Chu Li took a deep breath and smiled. Elder Jin, please go back first. I've just arrived here and want to stay for a while. All right. Jin Yi was stunned. He stared at Chu Li and slowly nodded. He was shocked and uncertain. With Zhuge Tian's intelligence, he should be able to see through his plan. However, not only did he not go back to stop him, but he stayed here instead. Was he not afraid that he would persuade everyone in Crouching Bull Mountain and prevent him from taking the position? He thought about it and guessed that Chu Li would only stay here for 2 days. Then, he would rush back quickly to fight with him in Crouching Bull Mountain to win over the people's hearts. He decided to speed things up. After returning to the mountain, he would cut the Gordian knot and strive for 2 days to calm the people's hearts. With his prestige, it would not be difficult. He had been guarding the surpassing state. All disciples who wanted to break through came to the surpassing state and received his guidance and teachings. They were respectful and grateful to him. As long as he gave the order, everyone would listen. Xiao Lian looked at Chu Li anxiously. Chu Li said, as expected of the surpassing state. It's isolated from the world and formed its own world. He realized that the surpassing state was like another world. It was isolated from the original world. He could not even sense Shao Qi and the others. It was really strange. He admired the person who built the surpassing state. This was a true divine power. Compared to martial arts, changing the world was a real ability. Jin Yi said faintly, "A world of its own." "Well said. I'll take my leave." He turned around and left after he finished speaking. All the elders left with him. Chapter 1888. Chu Li calmly said, "Elder Xia, don't worry." Xia Lian turned around and said, "Young lord, they're too much. If they didn't stop us, we might be able to see the Hill Master one last time." Chu Li asked, "Why did the Hill Master ascend to heaven?" The Hill Master is cultivating the last picture of the Crouching Bull insight. According to the Hill Master, he has already comprehended it completely. As long as he cultivates in isolation, he will be able to cultivate it in one go and achieve perfect mastery. Even if he can't defeat an enlightened master, he will be able to look down on his peers among the grandmasters. Chu Li frowned. If he has already comprehended it, why? It's not going well when he starts to cultivate it. I thought he would be able to cultivate it in a month, but after 2 months, 3 months, the isolation became longer and longer, and he was unable to extricate himself. Xia Lian said. Chu Li sighed. "Forget it, there's no point in talking about this now." Xia Lian said, "Once the Hill Master leaves, it will be difficult for you, young lord. We shouldn't have agreed to let Elder Jin return." He addressed him as an elder, which meant he was speaking as one of the elders of Crouching Bull Mountain. Chu Li said, "Since we can't stop him, we might as well let him go. Tell everyone that I want to talk about martial arts." "Yes." Xia Lian instantly looked excited. The Crouching Bull insight that the young lord was talking about was an eye-opener. It changed his previous way of thinking, and his cultivation speed was surprisingly fast. He had already advanced a level, and at this rate, breaking through to the 8th level of the Crouching Bull insight was just around the corner. There were 22 innate masters in the entire surpassing state. If they could all become grandmasters, then Crouching Bull Mountain's strength would truly become a first-rate sect, and not just in name. "Let's go see the Hill Master first," Chu Li said. The two of them arrived in front of a mountain wall. Xia Lian opened the mountain door and entered the cave. Inside was a spacious and bright stone room. It did not have the dark and damp feeling of a cave. Instead, it felt enlightened and peaceful. It was obviously not an ordinary cave. Zhuge Feng sat on the stone bed in the middle of the cave. His lifelike face revealed a smile. When Chu Li saw the smile, he frowned and looked at Xia Lian. Xia Lian was also puzzled. Initially, he thought that Zhuge Feng's face would be hideous, he would be in unbearable pain, and he would die from qi deviation. He never thought that he would end up like this. It was as if he had seen through everything and obtained a great release. He was like a senior monk of Buddhism who was enlightened and became Buddha. He walked away happily and carefreely. "Mountain Chieftain, this is?" He furrowed his brows and said, "Looks like it really wasn't Elder Jin's doing." Chu Li nodded. He could see that Zhuge Feng's smile came from the depths of his heart. It was obvious that he had understood something and was extremely happy. But why did he leave so suddenly? After circling around Zhuge Feng's bed twice, his gaze landed on the fist mark on Zhuge Feng's knee. He stared at the fist mark thoughtfully. Xia Lian looked at the fist mark in confusion. "This is the Mountain Chieftain's, right?" Chu Li nodded and slowly closed his eyes. As he stared at the fist mark, the omniscient mirror and the heavenly star insight technique were activated in his mind, replaying the situation at that time. The movements and expressions of Zhuge Feng, who was lying on the bed, flashed at the same time to verify the fist mark. Deducing from his expressions and movements, coupled with the fist mark as evidence, It was more beneficial to deducing what he was thinking. After a while, he opened his eyes. The omniscient mirror in his mind flashed Zhuge Feng's expression, happy and excited. He finally solved this big secret and could not wait to go to the Outland to find his master to verify his guess. Chu Li looked at Xia Lian thoughtfully. Did the honorable master also go to the Outland? Xia Lian was startled and shook his head. I really don't know. I'm afraid he didn't. He and Zhuge Feng did not have the same master. Zhuge Feng's master was his master's senior. When the master's senior was still alive, it was not easy to go to the Outland. It required sufficient cultivation and inheritance. Although the inheritance of the Crouching Bull Mountain was long, it was not the best. So it was very difficult to go to the Outland. If the master went to the Outland, the entire Crouching Bull Mountain would know. It should not be kept a secret. Chu Li frowned and said, "The honorable master must have gone to the Outland." Xia Lian was surprised. Chu Li completely understood. He shook his head and laughed. The honorable master hid it from everyone and secretly went to the Outland. The hill master suddenly knew about this secret, so he could not wait to go and see. The hill master is really... Xia Lian shook his head and smiled bitterly. Just because of this, he suddenly passed away and pushed the young lord to the edge of the cliff. He really did not know what to say. Chu Li said, "The hill master is tired of worldly things. Seeing that the Crouching Bull Mountain is so prosperous, he has nothing to worry about, so he left the rest to us." "That's the only way," Xia Lian said. "But the young lord must not be careless. Masters Junior Jean and the others are very difficult to deal with." Chu Li smiled. "Elder Xia, you can go first. I will stay here to accompany the hill master." "All right." Xia Lian looked at Zhuge Feng's body, and closed fist saluted before leaving. Chu Li stretched out his hand and gently pressed on the fist mark. He smiled. 3 days later, Chu Li left the surpassing state. In these 3 days, he completely understood the surpassing state and the temperament of the 4 elders. The 4 of them listened to Jin Yi. They would support whoever Jin Yi supported as the hill master. They would not go against Jin Yi. This was because Jin Yi had done them a great favor, and also because they did not have a good impression of Zhuge Tian. His previous evil deeds made them feel that even if he turned over a new leaf, he had done evil things and could not be tolerated. Chu Li did not change. He only taught the 22 innate masters martial arts and explained the Crouching Bull insight in detail. He explained it in more detail than when he was at the Crouching Bull Mountain. The 22 innate masters learned a lot and showed signs of breaking through. Xia Lian was full of praise as he listened. In terms of the depth of martial arts, the young lord was rare in the world. He was so young but had such a deep knowledge of martial arts. It could only be concluded that he was a genius. On the evening of the 4th day, the 2 of them returned to the Crouching Bull Mountain. As soon as he returned to his courtyard, Qiao San quickly welcomed him with an anxious expression. "Young lord, you're finally back." Chu Li came to the stone table in the pagoda and sat down. He looked relaxed. "What happened?" Qiao San quickly served him tea and said anxiously, "Young lord, if you didn't come back, everyone would have been dragged away by Elder Jean and the others. I heard that the hill master has ascended to heaven?" Chu Li nodded and took a sip of tea. "Everyone listens to them? Who hasn't been taught by Elder Jean? How can we not? Young lord, why aren't you anxious at all?" Qiao San shook his head. "What's the use of being anxious? They can't wait for the new hill master to take the position, right?" Chu Li leisurely sipped his tea. "Yes. Young lord, if you came back 2 days later, everything would be too late. They're going to choose the new hill master tomorrow. Although your name is on the list, if you're not here, it's still not enough." Qiao San nodded. Chu Li said, Let's see what everyone thinks." "Young lord, you can't." Qiao San was shocked. Chu Li smiled. "Why not?" Chapter 1889. Chu Li shook his head. He can't be the Hill Master. My young lord, he can't do anything when the Hill Master is around, but now that the Hill Master is gone, Elder Jean has become everyone's leader. Everyone follows his lead and no one will go against his wishes. Even when the Hill Master announced that young lord would be the next Hill Master, no one will go against Elder Jin's wishes. Xiao San said anxiously. Chu Li smiled. Who do you think is more prestigious, the Hill Master or Elder Jean? Well, of course it's the Hill Master. Xiao San hesitated for a moment before answering slowly. Chu Li glared at him. Xiao San quickly smiled. It's hard to say. It's usually the Hill Master, but once the Hill Master dies, the Hill Master's words may not be able to stop Elder Jin's words. Young lord, you can't let Elder Jean do as he pleases. Chu Li said, Alright then. Go and tell everyone that I'll be lecturing at the martial arts hall tonight. Okay. Xiao San nodded excitedly. No matter what, he had to let everyone know that the young lord was back first. Moreover, the young lord's lecture had benefited everyone greatly. Everyone was in awe of him, and said that the young lord had pulled them back from the wrong path. It was really amazing. He was indeed the young lord, a genius. As long as the young lord spoke nicely, everyone's hearts might change. In the martial arts world, martial prowess reigned supreme. Martial prowess was the most crucial factor. If there was a mountain chieftain with amazing martial prowess, everyone would be at ease. If the mountain chieftain's martial prowess was not up to par, everyone would not be so confident. The young lord had once crippled Lu Tianji's martial arts. This was his biggest advantage. Moreover, the Hill Master had personally announced him as the next Hill Master. He excitedly ran out to inform everyone. The sun was setting and twilight was rising. After dinner, everyone came to the martial arts hall in twos and threes. The martial arts hall was brightly lit as if it was daytime. The high platform was empty. Everyone was slightly disappointed. They still had a lot of questions to ask the young lord. However, the young lord was always in a hurry, as if he was very busy and had no time to answer everyone's questions. Jin Yi, Hu Huarong, and Lu Tianji soon appeared below the platform. Behind them were Xia Lian, Murong Chun, and 4 other elders. Xia Lian's expression was as gloomy as dripping water. Murong Chun, on the other hand, looked calm as he scanned his surroundings from time to time. When he saw Murong Liang in the crowd, he shook his head. Murong Liang nodded. Murong Chun knew that Murong Liang stood no chance at all. Murong Liang was much more mature now, so he agreed to stop dreaming. Seeing Lu Tianji, everyone discussed in low voices. Whether or not Lu Tianji could become the mountain master had always been a topic of debate. Some people felt that there was no problem. Although their martial arts skills were inferior to the young lord's, they still had Elder Jin's guarantee. They could not trust Lu Tianji, but they could trust Elder Jin. Some people felt that it was inappropriate. The young lord was the next Hill Master, and the young lord's martial arts skills were stronger. Jin Yi and Hu Huarong stood together while Lu Tianji stood behind them. Hu Huarong stroked his silver beard and frowned. What the hell is he doing? We have to be on guard. Jin Yi nodded. Lu Tianji, on the other hand, looked indifferent. He no longer desired the position of Hill Master. His martial arts skills were not as good as Zhuge Tian's. Even if he became the Hill Master, he would not have enough confidence and would inevitably feel guilty. He might as well just give it to Zhuge Tian. Unfortunately, he could not say this out loud and could only keep it to himself. Hu Huarong said, no matter how much he tosses and turns, this is the general trend. He can't do anything about it. Jin Yi stroked his beard and sighed, remaining silent. The surroundings suddenly became quiet. Everyone raised their heads. Chu Li had already appeared on the high platform. Chu Li's gaze swept across the crowd like lightning. He said slowly, seeing that everyone has made great progress, I feel very gratified. At least my efforts were not in vain. I did not take out my trump cards and share them with everyone. Everyone closed-fist saluted. They had a deep understanding of martial arts. What Chu Li imparted was indeed his experience and secret understanding. Ordinary people would never say this out loud. Chu Li said, "I'm not here today to talk about martial arts. I'm here to tell everyone about the Hill Master." The crowd was in an uproar. Chu Li continued, "The Hill Master has already ascended from the victory boundary. I saw it with my own eyes. I've also seen the Hill Master's body." He left with a smile on his face. "I'm sure he can't wait to go to the Outland to enjoy his life." Everyone smiled. Chu Li said, "Before the Hill Master passed away, he left this for me." As he spoke, he took out a black ring. Under the light, it glowed with a black luster as if it was carved from black jade. In fact, it was made of a strange material. No one could tell what it was. The Hill Master's ring. Everyone was shocked. Chu Li wore the ring on his left index finger. It fit perfectly. He showed it in front of everyone and smiled. "What do you think?" "Wait!" Hu Huarong shouted. Chu Li put down his left hand and said slowly, "Elder Hu, what can I do for you? How did you get this Hill Master's ring?" Hu Huarong scoffed. Chu Li smiled faintly. "Elder Hu, do you think that I stole this ring?" That's hard to say," Hu Huarong said. Chu Li shook his head. "Then when did I steal it?" Hu Huarong frowned. "Maybe it was during the Hill Master's isolated cultivation. The Hill Master did not wear this." Chu Li laughed. "The Hill Master carries the ring with him at all times. How could he not bring this?" "The Hill Master said that he did not bring it," Hu Huarong said in a low voice. Before the Hill Master entered the isolated cultivation, he told them that if anything happened to him, the Hill Master's ring was hidden at the foot of his bed in his bedroom. They could retrieve it and give it to the young lord. They rushed back and found the ring, but it was fake. They did not expect it to fall into Zhuge Tian's hands. They understood that they were fooled by the Hill Master. The Hill Master did not trust them at all. They wanted to go back, but Zhuge Tian had already returned. Chu Li smiled and shook his head. Why did the Hill Master lie to Elder Hu and Elder Jin? It's obvious that the Hill Master is wise and powerful. He had already predicted what the two elders would do. The Hill Master was right. He shouted at the crowd. "I was personally announced by the Hill Master to be the next Hill Master. Are Elder Jin and Elder Hu going against the Hill Master's orders?" As he spoke, he raised his left hand again. The Hill Master's ring shone with a black light under the light. He stared at the two with bright eyes. Jin Yi said in a low voice, "Young lord, you can ascend to the Hill Master's position. You just have to defeat me." Chu Li laughed out loud. Jin Ye's expression did not change as he looked at him. "Young lord, you're a genius. If you can't defeat me with your martial arts, forgive me for not obeying you. I'm willing to retire into the forest." He had been in charge of the surpassing state for almost 100 years. His roots were deep and his mastery of the surpassing state was unparalleled. If he left the surpassing state, Crouching Bull Mountain would no longer have a formation master. It would greatly affect the safety of the surpassing state. Chu Li chuckled. "Since Elder Jin has the intention to retire, I won't force you. Elder Jin has worked hard for Crouching Bull Mountain for so long. It's time for you to rest. I'd like to experience Elder Jin's skills." He waved his hand to signal Jin Yi to go up the stage. Hu Huarong stared at him angrily. This young man was so rude. Jin Yi waved his hand and suddenly appeared on the stage. He threw a punch at Chu Li. Chu Li threw a punch too. Bang! The two ordinary fists collided. It was like a muffled thunder. Jin Yi flew backward. His body was lifted off the ground like a rag doll. He had completely lost control. Chu Li calmly looked at Jin Yi, who staggered and almost fell, but Hu Huarong held him up. He said lightly, "Is there anyone else who objects to my ascension?" Everyone was silent. They did not expect the young lord's martial arts to be so strong that Elder Jean could not even take one hit. Julie was about to speak when he frowned and looked up at the sky. Two streams of light streaked across the sky and fell straight down. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.